Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow is underway on the Wednesday edition. Glad you're with us. Across the OutKick network, includes the live stream right now on YouTube. Just search out OutKick. Chad is in the chat, ready to go there. Always hopping. Needs to be better than yesterday, though, right?
I'm in it. I'm all up in the chat right now, and I need that chat to have way more positive vibes than what we had yesterday. I just think it was Tuesday's a weird day, everybody.
Yep.
We know this, right? It can be a tough day. We're one step closer to the weekend today. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Weekend starts on Thursdays on this show. That means we're on the weekend eve at this point. I think the chat's going to be much more productive today, Hutton. I feel good about it.
Great show planned. We've got Bobby Carpenter, who will join us coming up in 20 minutes, the very latest across college football and more. Primary complaint each and every Wednesday. And Clay Travis, also our founder of OutKick, will be with us as he is each week at the second hour of the show. Mark Harris from OutKick.com has all of the news regarding the PGA and what's going on with Rory, stepping aside from the player council, the advisory council, and a possible conclusion to the LIV and PGA merger and possible investors as well. Plus, Michael Bratton, SEC Mike, he jumps in, and we've got a ton to discuss on firings, job openings, who's next on the chopping block. We've got some opinions on that. Plus, Georgia, number one in the country. A lot.
Hutton, I think we're good. I think that covered it right there. We hit every single thing we're going to talk about today. It's been a great show already. That's just a little snippet of what we're going to get to. I am pumped up about it. I'm really pumped up, before we get into the pressing matters,
Yes.
that I'm done with all online work for the final slow pitch 8U softball tournament of the year. This is it. This will be the last time.
This has been your...
For those that love hearing about me coaching
like
8U coach pitch softball, then you're going to love that this is almost over. For those that love me talking about it, you're going to hate this, but I'll be done until 2024 after this weekend. And I mean, short of donating plasma is what I've had to do. I almost had to go through a retinal scan to get my roster inputted into a website and clear all other rosters any girl's ever been on before entering this tournament. I did not know that my 8-year-old girls are going to be playing in the College World Series in Oklahoma City in softball this weekend. But apparently that's what we are getting into, and I'm ready to go. They're ready to go.
Bring your IDs.
That process is over. I'm excited.
Bring your birth certificates.
Birth certificates, you always got to have that handy. Moment of parent says
there will
anything,
be drama.
You start waving the birth certificate like your passport and show that they're of age. It's time to go, Hutton.
Maybe we're about to see the Browns go backwards, because as soon as we see Deshaun Watson once again play well, especially in the second half this past week, in a comeback win over the Baltimore Ravens. News out today, he's done for the year. A broken bone in his shoulder that was sustained during the first half of this past weekend's game. And then he goes on to, 14 of 14 as they begin the second half and come back and win the game that sent them to 6-3 overall. Today the news comes out that he's done. Broken bone will send him, after an MRI, to injured reserve. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson is the starter for the Cleveland Browns now. 6-3, meeting up with the Pittsburgh Steelers, also with that record. And, Chad, this is, yet again, following the storyline of Deshaun Watson's tenure thus far with Cleveland. Gets the massive contract, fully guaranteed, and sits out based on the suspension last year, 11 weeks, comes back, doesn't do anything down the backstretch, and played well in Week 3, opted out after being cleared to play in Week 4 prior to the Baltimore game, continued to be on the injured list as more news came out on his injury. Comes back, plays, not great in previous starts since the return, and then last week, excellent over the third and fourth quarter, and they get a huge win, trying to build momentum behind that great defense and what can be a solid quarterback. That's not going to be the case. It's par for the course and the same offseason storyline that we saw last year for the Cleveland Browns.
What a weird season also for Deshaun Watson and the Cleveland Browns. He has his best performance against the Titans in a win, a blowout win. Then he's hurt the next week, and he's out. And then, we think he's coming back, according to Kevin Stefanski. No, he's still out. He was available to play today, but he elected to be out. Well, what's going on there? Oh, no, we completely backed Deshaun Watson. He's back. Oh, he's back. Oh, he still sucks. Okay, great. So now he's really good again. Oh, he just had his best day as a Brown and a big win and come from behind fashion against the Ravens. And then, he's done for the year immediately after that performance. It's strange. Strange times in Cleveland, and here they sit 6-3, a half game back in the division, right there in the mix for big things this year.
6th seed.
And now they're going to have to do it with P.J. Walker at quarterback?
No, it's not going to be P.J. Walker. It's going to be Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Wow. So Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to be the quarterback. How much would they want to have Josh Dobbs right now, who they traded to the Arizona Cardinals before the season?
They needed him last time this happened.
Yeah. And now Josh Dobbs is starring in Minnesota as they try to make the playoffs. So, again, it's just a very strange set of circumstances to get to the point where there's a lot to play for and a lot to be excited about this season with the Browns. But are you going to be able to hold on to your status without Deshaun Watson, even though Deshaun Watson wasn't all that good for the most part, except for a couple of games? It's a weird place to be in, Hutton, and then not just this season, now with Dorian Thompson-Robinson at quarterback, but what are the Browns moving forward, and is Deshaun Watson, can you call it? Is he already a bust? You can't give up on him, given what you've committed to him. I mean, all you can do is hope that he gets healthy and rehabs and comes back good next year. It's a strange place to be in. I feel like it's sort of this limbo right now for a Browns team that's got a dominant defense. I mean, you have a chance of wasting a dominating defense right now.
And an MVP caliber player in Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to go to a defensive player or any player other than the quarterback. But
he's that important.
He has been unbelievable.
He's Aaron Donald at his best, Micah Parsons, true game wreckers, Khalil Mack. At a time, I'm thinking about guys that you would point to and say, you got to account for them on every snap, and they truly change games on defense. He's one of those guys this year, but I can't help but feel like they're wasting that defense right now, especially given the fact that Deshaun Watson's out for the remainder of the season.
And that defense kept them in the mix whenever Watson wasn't able to go over that 4-week stretch, which included their bye week. P.J. Walker came in. It was Dorian Thompson-Robinson that started whenever he couldn't play against Baltimore at home, Watson I'm talking about, in week 4. And he completed barely 50% of his passes, I believe, in that game. They then go with the veteran in P.J. Walker, and since then to now, before Watson returned, Walker had 1 touchdown pass to 4 or 5 interceptions. Not good. They were winning despite P.J. Walker starting at quarterback, and they were beating some good teams. They beat the 49ers, for instance. Wasn't due to the quarterback play.
Right.
It was due to the defense. And can the defense alone keep them in the playoff mix based on where they are in the division they play in? I doubt it, because there's a lot of games left, and they're in the best division in football, and that includes Pittsburgh, who's also right there record-wise, and they also hold some victories over opponents within the division. So here we go again with the Browns and all the offseason storyline. What would the storyline be, by the way, if Dobbs was the backup in Cleveland right now and was playing the way he's been playing since he was traded to Minnesota? Maybe even the way he played whenever he was traded to Arizona originally, because it would be better play than what we've seen from the backups to Watson, and then the discussion would be really about boom or bust and the fact you can't go to any hot hand because you're going to stick with Watson no matter what based on the money that was allocated to him.
I think it would be way down on Deshaun Watson, would be the reaction in Cleveland, but with a mixture of optimism that the season's going to be fine because you got a quarterback who can do some things and you don't need everything because the defense can be everything for you. So this team is going to be okay. I don't think they had that sense right now with it. And you could hope for Deshaun Watson's eventual return to where at some point he's the quarterback. That's what's so odd about it, though, Hutton, is this is coming off a game where he was really good.
Right.
Now you show that flash again, and you think, okay, now he looks like that guaranteed money, big-time contract quarterback. Maybe he's going to be that the rest of the way. Now he's out for the year.
And that's the optimism, yeah. And also,
there would have been optimism in this season with Dobbs playing this way at backup.
And there's optimism based on the way you see that offense generate points when Watson's at his best or headed towards that path. Stefanski said this injury occurred in the first half. And then he had the second half, because he was not good in the first half this past week. Second half, he came out and played well, very good with the hot hand. That's the surprising part. Now, the Browns fans, yet again, high hopes, detrimental results and news coming out of Cleveland based on the injury to Watson, paired with that defense and what they could do and what they had ahead of them and where they were in the standings for the AFC North.
Well, and just, I mean, man, that defense, and they invested so heavily in Deshaun Watson when he was facing all those accusations. He goes on to basically not play for, 2 seasons or 2+ seasons? Because he came in with 5 games left last year. Did he miss the previous 2 seasons or a whole season before that?
He had not played since the 2020 season. The 2019-2020 season.
So, yeah, he missed 2 seasons and then most of a third. Came back in the next one. Terrible. Not great to start this year, but had 2 games where he flashed that old Deshaun Watson you could be excited about. And I just look and say, man, if they invested in so many other people, think of it, had a high draft pick at some point and could have drafted. I mean, it's just so many different routes they could have gone.
And the picks traded.
That would have been in a better spot to pair with this elite defense. That's what's unfortunate. It's not unfortunate to have an elite defense if you're a Browns fan. It's unfortunate that this is the pairing. This is like the worst wine and cheese combo pairing you could ever have. This fine Bordeaux that you have of a defense, and then you've got the worst government cheese that you can possibly have in the outlook at quarterback position. And it's not just having Deshaun Watson, who has mostly sucked. It's dedicating all of that money and all of that roster capital and salary cap space to Deshaun Watson. It's not like you're getting these performances and these injuries from a guy who's not costing you an arm and a leg.
Straight cash. Yeah.
Man, it's tough. Tough to be a Browns fan.
Extension 2020, and then demanded the trade, sat out, all the accusations, and we know the rest in 21. Traded. We know what happened last year. And, of course, same storyline for the injuries and questions about whether or not it's going to be a true bust. To this point, obviously, it has been. Chad, we know Jim Harbaugh is describing the Michigan Wolverines and what they've done to this point and what they did this past weekend at Penn State as America's team, which we'll hear in a moment. But it's as though when you hear this, Jim Harbaugh is describing 2022 TCU. But he's describing another team this year when he's actually talking about the Wolverines.
The perseverance, and then just the stalwartness of these guys. I mean, yeah, Watson, I would have to say, everybody. It's got to be America's team. It's got to be America's team. America loves a team that beats the odds, beats the adversity, overcomes what the naysayers and critics, so-called experts think. That's my favorite kind of team. And yeah, watching it from that view on the television, it was finally people get to see what I see every day, in these players and these coaches.
I'm sorry, Jim Harbaugh, but you're not describing Michigan in those comments. You're describing the Washington Huskies in these comments. They are this year's version of TCU from last season. Survive and advance every single week and making the plays necessary to survive games where you're capable of dropping one. And dropping one would mean you're not going to have the opportunity in the college football playoff to go for a national title. They remain at number 5. Georgia jumps Ohio State, and rightfully so, to be number 1 in the college football playoff rankings. Florida State remains where they were, and so does Washington, despite Washington's victory last week against Utah and what we saw from Florida State against unranked Miami. This is an upcoming matchup, though, this week for Washington, where they have top 10 ranked Oregon State on the road, and Florida State is facing North Alabama. This is the opportunity where Washington can jump into the mix in the top 4, because Boo Corrigan said they're very close to already jumping the Seminoles. But America's team, the average college football fan should gravitate to Washington because they're doing exactly what Harbaugh is describing, except Harbaugh's looking at this and playing the heel, talking about his team and everything there within Ann Arbor. All eyes on them, and they love them. Outside of it, not so much. The way they go about winning games and the excitement level, fun to watch, Heisman hopeful in Michael Penix Jr., Kalen DeBoer, in the way that he's jumping the ranks as one of the top coaches and what they're doing there, Chad. This is the team to watch. This is the team to root for. This is the team that I believe can beat anyone in the country, but they're not getting that recognition yet. The question is, can they win and continue to win the way TCU did enough to get into the mix last year? And then guess what? TCU beat Michigan. Washington, I believe, can do the same, and they'll do it behind the view of the perception of the right reasons.
Look, unless you are an Ohio State, a Michigan, an Alabama, a Georgia, most years Clemson fan, Washington is all of us. It's everyone else that roots for any other college football team that either hasn't sniffed a college football playoff, hasn't done anything when they've gotten there. It's new blood, and we need new blood at the top of college football. We need it desperately. So if you want that, root like hell for the Huskies moving forward. I've been rooting for them since before the season started. I hope they continue. I hope they find a way into that 14 playoff.
Bobby Carpenter next. More college football discussion on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this, because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA, because let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today. So I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Of college football discussion and headlines. Hot Mike with Hutton Withrow rolls on across the OutKick Network. Coming up, primary complaint. An hour from now, we've got Clay Travis. Right now, we say hello to Bobby Carpenter. Sirius XM Channel 84 is where you can find him, as well as across the board, including with McAfee and others. Bobby, good to see you, man. How are you?
Hudson Withrow, great to see you guys, man. And it seems like as quickly as it comes, it goes. And with Thanksgiving just a week away, holy smokes, man, the college football regular season, it's kind of evaporating right in front of our eyes.
This one has been exceptionally fast, I feel like, too, this year, where I just blinked and then here we are, and it's Thanksgiving already. Bobby, I think the world of you. I like you a lot. I probably am never going to get as emotional as Sherrone Moore did, though, talking about Jim Harbaugh when talking about you. And even you're in great shape. Let's be honest, I'm going to die well before you. But even if you go before me and I'm at your funeral, I'm not going to speak with that much emotion about you. How strange was that post-game interview where he goes from thanking the Lord to F-bombing to I love the bleep out of you, talking about Jim Harbaugh, a guy who's not sick, not dead, but back at the team hotel watching the game because of a suspension?
You know, that to me, Withrow, is the most interesting piece of it all. It would have been one thing if, like, Jim Harbaugh would have been stricken by illness, if he had a death in his family, if there was some reason why he couldn't be there due to health, but there was some life-threatening condition. And listen, we all love football. I love it as much as you guys. We're very passionate about the sport of college football. It's tremendous. It's fantastic. And it should obviously be played and coached and watched with a lot of emotion. However, that was a bit extreme for a guy that, was just suspended. We can argue about whether or not he knew, whether he didn't know, and different things. But there were things that obviously went on within his program. And, the Big Ten obviously rendered a judgment on that. Now there's going to be a little court battle and everything that ensues. And, kudos to Sherrone Moore and Michigan for going out there and beating up Penn State. They bullied them in their house. They ran the ball the entire second half. Heck, I think they only attempted one pass, got a PI out of it. So I get all that. But, when you invoke God and then you bring in some F-bombs and some different profanity, I feel like we're kind of all over the board with our messaging there.
Bobby Carpenter with us. Bobby, from a defensive mindset, knowing what Michigan did to Penn State and how they went about beating them offensively, what's going on in the mindset of a defensive player at linebacker, on the defensive front, as they do nothing but just run the football right at them and take care of business and make it look easy?
Well, if you're going to play them, you have to realize and recognize it's going to be a full day's work. And you can't hope that, they just stop running it, because that's not the reality. That's not in their DNA. That's not who they are. They're going to line up and they're just going to run the football at you over and over and over again. They're going to run it on 3rd and 8. They're going to run it on 3rd and 5. They're going to usually have 3rd and 3s, and they're going to keep running it. Now there'll be a play action in there. Maybe they have a drop back pass. Maybe they throw a screen. But to think that they're not going to run the ball is a fool's errand. You had better prepare yourself mentally and physically when you play a team like that for 50 to 55 plus runs. And you know what? If you can get a lead and you can get them out of running it, great. Michigan's pretty disciplined. I don't think that they'll probably stray too far from their running game unless it becomes more than a 2-score game at some point. But they're going to lean in, and this is the way they're built. They like to go a lot of wide services, 3-man, 4-man to a side, And so if they do score through, your second level and third level defenders are stretched, and those things can ultimately hit you for home runs. And so you've got to be prepared coming in that it is going to be a slugfest for 60 minutes.
Is there more pressure on Ohio State? And there's always pressure on both these teams, especially Ohio State going into this year. But is there more pressure if this suspension is upheld and there is no Jim Harbaugh in that game when those two teams meet?
Maybe you could be onto something there. There might be some more pressure. Yeah, he's not on the sideline. You better get it done. But I'm watching that game. Like Jim Harbaugh, he doesn't call the plays. Offensively, he's not a defensive guy. He's not calling the defensive signals either. I'm watching it. His DNA is all over that game. Like, and that's a good thing. Like, his team is built in his image of what he wants to do. Sherrone Moore knew how they need to go out and execute, how they needed to play. And I sat there and watched. It was no more evident. I think it was a 3rd and 9, and they go to a bunch formation and run a QB sweep with J.J. McCarthy, pick up the first down. And I look at that. I'm like, man, that reminds me of Alex Smith when they played, I believe, the New York Giants for a chance to go to the NFC Championship game when he was with the Niners. Like, it was borderline the exact play. In a very similar situation, it was a 3rd and medium to longish, 6 or 7 yards. They knew they were going to get man coverage. And you know what? We're going to go run the football on you, and we're going to run with the quarterback and force somebody to come off, and make a play. And so as I look at that, yeah, if he's not there, there probably is an added pressure to win. But I don't think him not being there is a massive disadvantage either. I mean, I guess the main thing is the decisions win the game, to punt, to go for it, to kick field goals, how you manage the game and clock. But he's been up there for a while, and you feel like they're kind of equipped to be able to handle it. But there probably is a little added pressure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think also with McCarthy there, that helps. Just being able to manage things from his experience and standpoint at quarterback, and he can sling it. I mean, there's a reason why we're discussing him a couple of weeks ago for Heisman discussion in the rankings and the percentage or whatever chances he had. It was more than just handing the football off. Bobby Carpenter with us here on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Bobby, what would you do if you were paid $77 million to fail the way Jimbo Fisher has just been fired and is getting a massive payout where each day that passes, he'll make about $26,000?
I'd go sit on one of my ranches and be John Dutton and just look at my land and try to enjoy it and maybe ride horses, fish a little bit. You look at Jimbo Fisher and what he's done. He had a lot of success early on at Florida State. I think out of his first 6 years, 5 of them, or maybe out of his first 7, 6 of them were double-digit win seasons. He went to a couple, went to the CFP. They won a national championship, but a lot of that was done with Jameis Winston. You take him out of the equation, they haven't had quite as much success, and he especially hasn't had nearly as much success at A&M. And I give him a lot of credit for being able to re-up his deal and extend it. But it just seemed like this year, like they couldn't get out of neutral. Bjork had a great line about that. Like, we're driving 55 in the left-hand lane, and that's kind of what it felt like. They had great recruits, they have great facilities, they had everything you needed, and offensively, they never really seemed like they were a cohesive unit, and that's what he was brought in to be, is this offensive guy to kind of piece it all together. And I know people get mad at saying this. They're trying to bring in Dan Lanning. Like, Oregon's a better job. And I know that Texas A&M, they'll look at the winning percentage and the historical things and all this. Give me the last 25 years. Give me since recruits today have been alive, the last 20 years. And I put Oregon's record and what they have and the facilities and the success and all the different things right beside of A&M's. I mean, it's a better situation, and they're not in the SEC. They get to roam the Northwest. They get the West Coast. They're joining the Big Ten. Dan Lanning's already built it there, and they don't have the stress or the pressure. Like, it's a better job right now at this point. And so A&M, like, it felt like they swung hard with Jimbo. I'm curious to see which way they go now, because it seems like they may try to go with, a coach at a smaller school, or maybe a coordinator that's maybe not this massive name that you're going to have to overpay for, because they tried that already. It didn't work.
So that buyout accounts for more than half of this, but $146 million are allocated in the Power Five right now to buyouts since last year. If you're the current players, former players going in front of the Capitol Hill, if you're NIL, if you're a collective, don't you just hammer this home as far as the money goes, and the argument being made that there needs to be federal legislation in regards to how college sports will move forward with this free-for-all, quote-unquote, that is being argued against name, image, likeness and the transfer portal?
You know, I think there probably needs to be some level of guidelines, but here, this is how we got here is the fact that there's all this money being made, and then there's nowhere to spend it. So the only places to spend it are on coaches and facilities. And so that's why we see these immaculate palaces. That's why we see coaches that are getting $10 million a year. And you know what? There's a lot of places where some of those coaches are worth it, and they've had success that deems you to be worth it. And you know what? I guess if someone's willing to pay it, that's how much you're worth. But if you look at how much some of these guys are getting paid and how they've been spinning through these buyouts, you wonder, like, couldn't that money be better allocated? And like you said, maybe it's the players, maybe it's to whoever. But college football is big business, and you know these schools, you know, they're not in the business of making profit; they're in the business of winning. And so in the NFL, people have to take into account, if you're the owner, well, do I really want to waste all this money? You give Mark Davis a ton of credit for spending whatever $70-80 million and firing his coach and GM. Well, because he has to eat that. In college, there's no one making that money. And so it's just people giving. They have the best model in the world, gentlemen. Think about this, where you can charge a ton of money to come see your games. You charge a ton of money to see them on TV. Oh, and by the way, you also walk around with the offering bucket every couple months and say, hey, we need more money to be able to have success.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Bobby. If someone's worth it, pay them that in their salary and what they're making in their I hate the buyouts. I hate people getting paid to fail when they get fired and they get to walk away with that much money. That's something that needs to be corrected. Here's my question about A&M, though, because we know how this process works, where agents are going to play this game, and they're going to get their guys raises and even bigger buyouts, their current job, if they don't go to A&M. Do you think that this thing is going to be sober in that A&M knows who they want? They're going to go hire them quickly. There's not going to be a lot of names mentioned. There's not going to be a lot of flight tracker going on. Or is this going to be a classic SEC college football coaching search circus where everyone's going to be thrown out there? We are going to be tracking planes and all that stuff's going to happen. How does A&M attack this coaching search and hire?
I think they go about it the former. When we start talking about it, it's good. Probably I would keep it tighter. You don't need to go for everyone. Like, they threw out names like Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell is an A&M alum. He's not leaving the Detroit Lions. I mean, they're in a Super Bowl hunt. Like, he has got it set there. There's a lot of these crazy names. They threw out Dan Lanning. I think this is something where they look at a coach, maybe at a lower tier group, Power 5, maybe a Group of 5 school. Maybe there's a coordinator out there, and they try to get this thing done quietly and quickly, as opposed to all the crazy fanfare, because you've seen how that's worked. And you watched, and Penn State fans are probably lamenting this, that James Franklin, they were able to play the opening at USC off of that, and USC was complicit in it because everyone thought that they were ultimately going to hire him. And meanwhile, they were working Lincoln Riley the backdoor out of Oklahoma. So there's a lot of high-level gamesmanship that's going to be played. I just think A&M, probably with where they're at and everything that's happened, let's figure it out. Let's target a guy. They don't have to be the splashiest hire. Get someone that will win, and let's get it done quick.
Bobby Carpenter with us. There in Ohio, what's the sentiment of what has happened with Deshaun Watson with today's news that the broken bone in his shoulder he's done for the year after playing a great second half and winning the game in comeback fashion against Baltimore this past weekend?
It finally looked like the $240 million or whatever it was guaranteed was paying off. You saw quintessential Deshaun Watson in the second half, 14-14, doing with his legs, doing with his arms. Massive comeback against Baltimore, which they were a little complicit in allowing them to come back. But you know what? They're 6-3, and you're thinking, man, this team could be poised. Maybe win the division, maybe win a couple playoff games, could be Super Bowl contenders. Who knows? Their defense is elite. And now all of a sudden you get this news, and it is a punch to the gut, because a couple weeks ago there was the trade deadline. You could have maybe brought in Josh Dobbs, who he looks like the hottest thing cooking right now in Minnesota, and he was familiar with the system. So not only is it bad, but like the timing of when it could have happened couldn't be worse.
I'm with you.
Are you good with Georgia jumping up to number 1 after that blowout win over Ole Miss?
Yeah, I mean, I think if this is a week-to-week basis, you look at who they played, and if we believe Ole Miss is as good as we thought they were, they smoked them at home. And Georgia, while has muddled around in maybe games that we think they shouldn't have, in games of consequence when the expectations are the biggest, they have really played well this year. Plus, you got to see a healthy Brock Bowers. He looks good out there again. So there's a lot of movement. This week, I don't think there's a ton of big games in the eastern part of the United States. The Pac-12's got some good ones. And then it'll come down to rivalry Saturday and how that ultimately looks there in the conference championship.
Bobby, final minute here. If Quinn Ewers is in fact returning for another season, is Arch Manning entering the portal, or do you think he stays?
Here's the thing, man. The Mannings are strategic. They are smart. They don't react, just to random news. Like, they're going to think through this and be very. If they thought Sark in Texas was the right place to develop them, and they knew that Quinn Ewers was there, it wasn't like this guy came out of nowhere and just dropped out of the sky. There has to be a thought that, hey, you know what? He might be good, but not good enough to leave after one season. And so I don't believe that they're going to be crazy knee-jerk reactionary to this. Maybe he does, but I don't think this is a certainty. I would put the safe money on him returning to Texas at this point.
Bobby Carpenter joins us each week and always brings it. Bobby, great to see you as always, man. Get back to it, and again, enjoying everything on SiriusXM and beyond.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Bobby.
It's Bobby Carpenter. At BCarp3 is how you can follow him on social. And, check him out on SiriusXM Channel 84, which, Chad, you listen to very often on Saturdays.
I do.
For the wraparound coverage.
Running some errands, going to practices or games, and always listen to that. It's great content on your Saturday afternoon listening to games.
Coming up, we air our top grievance of the week. Primary complaints straight ahead. Hot Mic with Dutton and Withrow across the OutKick network.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
Hot Mike with Head Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Coming up in just a bit, Clay Travis will join us straight ahead. Plus, Chad, another coach could be on the way out. We'll discuss Chip Kelly in UCLA.
The report is that he is on his way out. It's just whether or not it's going to be after this weekend's game or if they beat USC, they'll wait till the end of the season.
It's very. I mean, that's the Ferentz way.
Can you imagine Chip Kelly's post-game interview? Sherrone more like if they beat USC, and he's tearful. Hey, I want to let everybody know that I know that my job here is over, but I got a few things I got to get off my chest.
Some crazy decisions in how they've been handled this year, across football in general.
Well, we'll get into a bigger discussion on it. I think there's obviously a big change happening in college football starting next year with a lot of realignment and teams adding to conferences, adding teams, moving around, and it just sort of feels like everyone's trying to move into this transitional period on the right foot, or at least on a new one. So we'll discuss, Start fresh. That's right.
Primary complaint in just a moment. I think another strange decision and just nonsensical. So, a story by Amber Harding at OutKick right now. A middle schooler in California suspended and not allowed to attend any further athletic events based on what the decision makers say was him showing up in blackface, a middle schooler wearing eye black to a high school football game because one of the teams was mostly black. This was perceived to be racist and blackface instead of eye black for a middle schooler attending a high school football game. What is going on with the reactionary decision-making and the assumption that everything is centered around racism?
Yeah, there's too big of a leap to this is racist, so this person needs to be suspended. I can't think of a rational way that if you go to the kid and the parents, even if someone complained about it, okay, hey, I'm offended by this kid. I feel like he's mocking, black people, whatever. It's offensive, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You have to answer things like that if you're an administrator or a principal or a teacher or whoever. You go to the kid. If the kid says, I don't know what they're even talking about, I was just wearing eye black like I do for my middle school games. I just wore it to support my team. Okay, case closed. Hey, maybe next time don't wear so much just so we don't have any confusion. You might have a talk with the kid about that to a game. Wear your eye black, but don't smear it all over. I don't know. Say something if you need to, but that's fine. You're not suspended. You're suspended for 2 days. And I have to think that the parents are appealing this. I know that there's some organizations getting involved to appeal it. But Hutton, to me, the simple act of saying, no, that's not what my son was doing. That was not his intent. Right. Either him saying it or his parents saying it. That's it. You're trying to prove intent here that this little kid's a racist. So he's going to be suspended for 2.
The reaction was he's wearing the eye black simply because one of the teams is mostly black, and not because he's just a football fan. And
right, but even if that's the accusation, I don't know how you don't just go to the kid and he says what's being said here that no, I'm just wearing eye black, and I need to know more about this because I feel like if the kid just comes back and says, no, I wasn't doing that, then he's not suspended. Like, who on earth would make that terrible of a decision? A school board member or principal or whoever, and if the parents are also defending it, I don't know. I feel like I need more information as to how this kid responded when they said something to him. Was he saying something during the game? Is there another side to this? Because this appears to be really, really stupid. Unless we're not getting the entire story.
And now the reaction, they've got there's a group that's fighting to defend the middle schooler known as JA. It's for First Amendment rights. So a middle schooler kid wearing eye black going to a football game turns into racism and First Amendment rights in the battle. It's just where we are is just so nonsensical. You have to be able to make sense in what you're doing and how you react.
Well,
and
doesn't someone
far too
have
often, it's just to appease the small group, or in some cases, very small group of complainers.
Well,
for the sake of complaining.
Someone has to answer to. I don't.
I mean, were they saying something verbally?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I feel like there has to be more to this story because this is on its face so, no pun intended, so dumb of a decision. Again, if the scenario is you go to the kid and say, hey, why is your face painted black? And he says it's eye black like football players wear. I mean nothing by it. Okay, great. Fine. Move about your day. If the kid says something else about it, or he's taunting the opposing team, or he's doing something we don't know about, well, that needs to be said also at some point. I hate, and Amber Harding wrote this piece at OutKick and did a good job with it, but Amber Harding gets this story at OutKick. It starts getting published other places. If I'm the principal who made that decision, I need to issue a statement. If there's press about this and there's another side of it, you need to defend yourself or say something. I hate the immediate just going and turtling when there's a story and not say, we're just not going to say anything. We're just going to be quiet. This is going to go away. That's what's so dumb about this. This kid's going to be suspended for two days.
Right.
He's going to have bad grades. He's not going to attend the events, and we're going to stop talking about it because they're not going to respond. The school board there, the principal, no one's going to say anything. They should say something. If there's more to the story that we're not covering, I'd like to know what it is. Again, because I just see this story and I start to get curious and think, there's got to be more to this, right? There has to be a history with this kid. There has to be behavioral problems. There has to be something he was saying or taunting someone with during the game.
Right.
There's more to this than just that, right?
And my guess is he's worn it before at other games because he's a middle school kid going to a high school.
That would be my assumption. If that's what he says, then the story's over and he's not suspended. So how on earth was he suspended? It just seems so stupid.
Chad, each and every week we air our top grievance of the week. It is time for primary complaints.
It's time to air our top grievance of the week.
You can complain all you want.
My job is so unfulfilling. Don't run away from your feelings.
It's time for Hot Mike's primary complaint.
Guys, my primary complaint this week is a wrong answer when there is no wrong answer to a question, and this is the Christmas edition. Because this is the time of year where it is you just throw out the line, hey, do you have your Christmas, when do you put your Christmas tree up? Is your Christmas, are your Christmas lights up? And there is this perception that, there's a certain date that you have to do it by. Who cares? Who cares? There is no wrong answer to this. Stores putting out Christmas lights and trees and all of the furnishings for the season. Constant chatter about this. And it's just old and used and worn out. I'm tired of hearing this, just like I'm always tired going into a discussion of how's the weather or how are you doing, when the obvious answer from everyone is, oh, I'm fine, I'm good. Doesn't matter how someone's actually feeling. In this case, there's no wrong answer to whenever you do it. I mean, I'm not putting the tree up early, but you can, and it's not going to bother me one bit. That should be the universal feeling for the season. That's my primary complaint.
'Tis the season to be merry, Hutton. I'm with you.
Yeah, you don't have to put them up if you never take them down either.
Yeah, that's true. You could go year
There you
round.
go.
That's probably a separate issue.
Yeah,
said no wrong answers.
The HOA would stand by that too.
Look, I'm guilty of this. The moment eggnog goes on sale at the store, I'm getting it. It could be October, and I'll start drinking it. And then the moment my kids request Christmas music, and I'll go ahead and tell you, it was the day after Halloween.
Okay.
We're listening to Christmas music every morning on the way to school. So I'm with you. I don't care.
Just real quick,
celebrate however you want.
Though there are holidays, right? There's Halloween, there's Thanksgiving,
then there's seasons.
July 4th, and there's Christmas is a season. I stand by Christmas is the season, and you have other holidays. So if you want to celebrate the season whenever you want to, whatever.
If you want it to be the whole last 2 months of the year to be the season, then have at it. I'm with you on that one. Excess can be a fun thing, right? It's rarely a good thing, but excess can be tasty at times, unless you're dealing with mayonnaise, where excess is very rarely tasty. Okay, mayonnaise it's a condiment that I love. I apply it somewhat liberally on sandwiches, but to strike the perfect balance of mayonnaise to bread to meat to cheese to mustard on my ham and cheese sandwich that I eat most days. I mean, it's like a Picasso, okay? I'm very skilled when it comes to this. You get the butter knife out, you get the mayonnaise in there. I know exactly what I'm looking at that's going to perfectly cover one side of bread, one slice of bread with just enough mayonnaise to do it. But one of the worst things that you can do, whether you're making yourself a sandwich or someone's making it for you, is when you get the wrong ratio of mayonnaise. A little bit too much mayonnaise equals a lot of gross on the sandwich. This is a very, very tricky thing. It is a delicate breaking point of mayonnaise that is tasty and adds to the sandwich, or the mayonnaise that's too much and all you can taste is mayonnaise. When you over mayonnaise a sandwich, it will ruin your meal. If someone at a restaurant over mayonnaises your sandwich, you can't do anything about it. Because I feel like even when you start to scrape some of it off, that first bite leaves this lasting impression of mayonnaise just running out of your mouth. And that's all you're going to taste the rest of the time. Sorry for that visual. Over mayo is a real problem in America. I don't know if it's a problem in Europe or Asia or anywhere else. It is a problem in America, and I'm here to stop it. And over mayo is my primary complaint.
I don't think mayo is used in, I would say, majority of European countries.
I think Chad hates mayo the way Davey hates dairy.
That's not true at all. They dip their French fries in mayonnaise in France. You know how I know that? Pulp Fiction. John Travolta's character says they dip their fries in mayonnaise.
Well,
oh, yeah.
If Tarantino wrote it, it must be true.
Their French fries are going mayonnaise. I also just watched a travel show about Santiago, Chile. And it made me think about this. They're big in sandwiches there, and they put mayonnaise on everything in South America and in Chile. Big mayonnaise country.
I'll have to do more research on which countries utilize mayo and which don't. But I'd never heard the term over mayo, Chad, so I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Giving me that knowledge.
I'm an educator, David.
Guys, I might have some pushback on my primary complaint, but my primary complaint is when you know your team needs to lose in order to be successful long term. In a couple examples, we're talking about it's hot seat season. You have several coaches. I mean, just across college football, we look at them right now, and we know, depending on how these final couple of games go for these teams, it could be determining whether or not their coach is returning for a new season. Right now, I don't see Billy Napier ever winning a national championship at Florida. Sam Pittman's never going to win anything of major newsworthiness at Arkansas. And so if you're fans of those teams, even if you like that coach, it's not the worst thing for your team to lose those last couple of games. Because if your ultimate goal is to win a national championship and you know you don't have the guy to do it, get rid of the coach. And the only reason the coach is going to go away is if, one, he leaves for another job, or two, school comes together and says, hey, we need to fire him. I don't like the term, I get the term tanking season in the NFL, NHL, NBA, all the professional leagues. And while I know the team themselves is not going to tank, I don't necessarily get upset if I know my team is in a position where losing would actually be beneficial for them down the line. And that's my primary complaint, when people kind of have that pushback and say, no, if you're rooting against your team, you're not a true fan. No, I would argue I'm actually more of a fan because I want my team to be successful long term.
I think.
Speaking of excess, how about the blue today? All three of us.
Yeah, this is a good mix. It's a kaleidoscope of blue. Davey, I see your point. It's very hard for me as a fan to get there to actually go through the act of cheering against my team. Even if, like, in theory, you're right. Like, oh, this is actually better if they lose, whether an NFL team for draft picks or college to get a coach fired. But when push comes to shove, I have a hard time watching a game featuring one of my teams and saying, I'm going to root outwardly against my team. I default back to still wanting them to do well.
The only time I've ever done that was during the Jeremy Pruitt tenure at Tennessee.
Yeah.
But there were other things.
And you rooted for him to give fast food bags of cash out, and he did that too, and that's how he lost his job.
Maybe that's UCLA now with Chip Kelly.
Could be.
We'll discuss the likely
Do they
firing
have fans?
of Chip Kelly next.
Dabo Swinney ripping his own fans. Dabo Swinney at Clemson is, I don't know, they tell me that he's the guy that doesn't like the transfer portal because he's made some comments that weren't exactly supportive of it. Dabo Swinney has done a job at Clemson that very few thought could be done. Clemson is a town about this big. Well, I better do this, not that, because that's like a white power sign idiots say. It's about that big. The state is South Carolina. The state is not Clemson. But Dabo Swinney put Clemson in rarefied air. If you, a couple years ago, were going to name me the 3 best college football teams before Georgia's run here, you'd say Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's kind of who it always came down to. It felt like. So Dabo Swinney is now the victim of something that is good in one way, but it's bad in another. Incredible expectations of your fan base, meaning 10-2 ain't good enough. It just ain't. You can say whatever you want, but it just ain't. We got to be better. What? We're not in the college football playoff? What? We're not winning a national champion? What? We're 4-2? That's only winning 67% of our games? Here's what Dabo had to say. If you don't go undefeated, people say you're losers, that you're terrible. Let me tell you something. This is why football coaches for years and years and years and years fought the college football playoff. We're at a point in time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. It's just a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon get a little full. That's the one good thing about going through a little bit of so-called adversity is that you really find out who's with you and who's not. That's all crap. Let me explain to you Dabo Swinney's day, can I? Dabo Swinney probably wakes up around 5:30. Dabo Swinney smokes shit, shower, shave, shampoo, goes to the office. Probably has a meeting at 7. Dabo Swinney then is probably in different meetings with players or recruits or maybe the administration, and maybe watching film, whatever. Then he has practice. Then after practice, he's doing the same thing. Then in the evening, he's making phone calls. Probably goes home around 10. At no point in time in his day, his week, his month, his year, is he finding out who's with us and who's not with us. It's not like there's a list. Now, maybe you find out what media member wants to rip you, but on a daily basis, a monthly basis, you're not finding out any of this crap. It's very simple. Coaches, if you want to know who's with you, understand that when you lose, nobody's really with you. If you want to know who's really with you, win. And then everybody's really with you. It's literally that simple. As my father used to say to me, Dan, we're with you, win or tie, and we ain't so sure about the tie. So shut up with that stuff, win some football games, and don't sweat it. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Work hard, grab yourself a glass of wine, go sit in your chair, and read a book instead of being on social media or worrying about who is with you and who is not with you.
Just like that, the second hour is here. Hot Mic with Honey Withrow across the OutKick network. Glad you're with us. You can join us in the chat on YouTube. Just search out OutKick there. Chad is chatting away.
Chatting away.
Busy chat.
Got a lot of people with some mayo hate in the chat right now. These people don't know food.
You're saying mayo is not alpha, right?
Oh, mayo's alpha. I love mayo. I just like the right amount of mayo, not too much mayo. Mayo is the perfect. I was explaining this, but no one cared in the studio. By the way, I speak during the breaks, and no one cares. Colin sort of got it, I think, but was too busy looking up Notre Dame's basketball schedule against Auburn instead while I was talking. Mayo is the perfect accoutrement to the sandwich. It doesn't need to be the taste of the sandwich. Right?
You don't want a mayo sandwich with the side of turkey. Mayo adds
to the flavor of the meat and the cheese and the mustard on the sandwich, but I don't want to just taste the mayo on the sandwich.
Not the condiment.
It adds. It doesn't replace a taste. So that's what I need to get with mayo on the sandwich. And these Miracle Whip people, GTFO with Miracle Whip. That is gross. Way too sweet. There's something very unnatural about Miracle Whip to me when I taste it. My grandmother, Nana, R.I.P., great lady. She was a big Miracle Whip person, and she put Miracle Whip on sandwiches she made for me. Hated it. Then when I finally got her to make mayo put mayo on the sandwiches, way too much mayo. When I think about too much mayo, I think about my Nana, who did everything else right with me in my life, but the one thing she did that I did not approve of was put way too much mayo on sandwiches she made for me as a little boy. That's the one thing I didn't like. But over mayo, those who know what I'm talking about with this.
You know what is
Hutton doesn't eat, so he doesn't quite comprehend what I'm saying.
No, I don't like a bunch of mayo either. I'm with
He
you.
eats root and seaweed, and you don't put mayo on either one of those things, so he doesn't know what I'm talking about.
Bird seed is what you used to say.
Bird seed also, yeah. A lot of just a different quinoa. I think Hutton's a quinoa. He can digest that. Other than that, nothing else.
I can't go that far. I can't go that far, Chad. But you know what is alpha, and not it can help you with excess. Manscaped.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
We can help you with excess.
Mayo can be a little bit spicy, depending on the mayo you get. Maybe you're ready to spice up your Thanksgiving holiday. As we dive headfirst into the mountain of mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce, let's talk about that unsung hero of the holiday season, the Manscaped Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. It's time to go cold turkey on your old razor and take care of yourself this holiday season, this Thanksgiving season, with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Visit manscaped.com and use code HOTMIC for 20% off and free shipping. And enjoy Thanksgiving in style with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code HOTMIC at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com.
Spell
and
that.
use the code HOTMIC. I will spell it, Hutton. Thank you. HOTMIC. That's all one word. There's no space there. There's no underscore. There's nothing in the middle of it. It's just HOTMIC. Be thankful this holiday season for the best gift of all from Manscaped. And, as always, your balls will thank you.
I'm always thankful for the hot seat season across college football and the NFL because you get to see how coaches respond to criticism. You also get to see, in pressure situations, guys are making millions. And a lot of them can't take the heat or the questions that are being thrown their way. I can't wait to see what Chip Kelly has to say to the report that, well, the decision's already been made. It just it matters what he does this week on whether or not he's going to finish out the season for UCLA or not. Chad, this is another version of we're not happy, we can be better, and we're going to move on, and we're going to jump in the pool and see who we can get that's more innovative and relates more to today's landscape of college football. It's crazy to me what Chip Kelly meant to Oregon versus what he's meant at any organization or program he's been at since, and how that relationship hasn't been the same compared to what it was in Eugene.
Well, and even, this year, fresh off a big recruiting win with Dante Moore, 5-star freshman quarterback, playing well at one point and not so well as of late. But they're 18th, I think, in the country in mid-October. They just come off a win over Colorado. And then the wheels kind of fall off a little bit. They get upset by Arizona State, who's not very good with a first-year head coach. And now reports are Chip Kelly's out at UCLA. And I understand the thinking behind it. He's not been nearly as good as was expected when he took that job. It felt like, okay, back in the Pac-12 where he had so much success at Oregon, he's going to start to duplicate at least some of that success at UCLA. It never really worked out. But this step by UCLA to me shows a sign of more things to come with college football and coaches that may be in a place of some uncertainty moving forward, especially ones that have been there 4, 5, 6 years at their current job. I think you're going to see some more programs decide this is an area of change now with different teams, especially Big Ten, SEC, all the movement. Pac-12's no more for the most part, except for the 2 teams left. Big 12 also, all the change there. So ADs are going to look at it as a chance to reset going into something new. Chip Kelly isn't the first. He won't be the last coach to suffer this fate. I think Arkansas is going to make a change with Sam Pittman. We saw it with Mississippi State. Maybe Mississippi State also knows something we don't about who they can hire pretty quickly to come back maybe to Mississippi State to coach, or someone else that's out there that wants that job that they know about where it's not going to be some long drawn-out search. But even if it's going to be a coaching search, one thing you can always sell in college sports, especially when you got a new coach, is hope, is patience and hope. And you know an area where you need patience and hope is when your conference just got tougher or there's new teams to compete with. You want to be able to sell to your alumni base, to your fans, patience and hope. You only sell patience and hope when you've got a first-year head coach. So while we start to see this shift in college football, we've seen it in recent years with transfer portal and NIL. We've entered a new era. We see those that are handling it well and others that aren't handling it well. You're going to see more ADs now moving into this 2024 season of another change, college football playoff expansion. Conferences are going to look a lot different. Some TV contracts may look different. Suddenly you're going to see them want to do that with a brand new coach. Why? Because they can sell hope and patience, and that is very important. UCLA wasn't going to be able to sell that with Chip Kelly coming back next year as they make the move to the Big Ten.
I'm curious, though, if another program can sell that by hiring Chip Kelly. You know, UCLA can't sell that. Who can now?
Depends on the program that gets him.
Would it be a Mississippi State type school?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, yes. But like
it would be a lower level Power 5 school, and that's the best case scenario right now.
But where would we rank UCLA in the level of Power 5 school for football? Right? Like to me, they're the forgotten team of the forgotten program of the 4 going to the Big Ten.
To me, they're very mid.
Yeah.
They're very middle of the pack. I don't think they're bottom of the Power 5, but I see it as a decent job, but it's not USC. It's not a better job in what was the Pac-12. It's gonna be a very middle of the pack to probably below Big Ten job. So I don't know how good it is.
Bill Plaschke is writing in the LA Times, if UCLA has any hope of being relevant in the Big Ten, Chip Kelly has to go. That was a column recently. And to me, if UCLA is admitting that, if that's the sentiment there, why would you bring that in? And then after 6 years or 6 years later, UCLA is, according to the media, they've gotten it wrong. Kelly's just not a fit. There's no innovation. There's no passion, excitement. That's what he was known for, though. And by and large, I think the majority of the fan base is, if you hire Chip Kelly, you think about Oregon. You're not thinking about UCLA. And all the right things are going to be said. Because the mantra, champions are made here, and the mantra or the sentiment and the perception now from columnists and fans is it's mediocre. And
Chip Kelly, here's what UCLA needs to do. They need to find their Dan Lanning. They need to go find a 36-year-old coordinator with a ton of energy and passion for recruiting. Chip Kelly has never been a recruiter. He's never wanted to. He hasn't liked it. It's not part of the game that he has ever embraced. And I do think part of the Chip Kelly problem and dilemma with any college program is he's not cut out for transfer portal, NIL, everything else in college football because he's never been a dynamic recruiter. Chip Kelly was ahead of the game for years, and he was an innovator. And then when the rest of college football started implementing things Chip Kelly was doing, he didn't have a curveball. He didn't go to another pitch. He still was doing the same thing he always was, and the rest of football caught up with him and started playing in a similar way. And then he had no change-up to that. That's what ended up happening to Chip Kelly. But Hutton, I look at UCLA. I look at Mississippi State to some extent, but I do like the idea of Dan Mullen also.
Yeah.
Indiana, they're probably going to move on from Tom Allen there. Some of these jobs.
Michigan State,
a little bit higher level of a job, but not much when you look at them or UCLA. Indiana, Mississippi State are put in the same kind of category, right? Of like lower level of their conference jobs.
Yeah, but is it?
They need to go find. They need to go find a Dan Lanning.
But lower level, is he? If you end up with Chip Kelly at a different program, we're naming the top two. We're naming the relevant conferences, and I'm curious if those relevant conferences go with a Chip Kelly now and sell that.
I wouldn't.
And
I don't think
the
you
success.
can. I don't think you can.
We've seen the track record now. It's a trend. It's not just a bad fit.
Right. I just don't think you can sell it now. I think, look, the game has. The guy still knows football. I'm not trying to act like he's forgotten everything. I'm not going to say the game has passed him by. The game caught up with him, and he didn't develop anything different.
The game copied him.
And then now you've got younger versions of Chip Kelly that also have a personality that can recruit players, that have hired better staffs, that aren't stuck in their ways at all. And they're better at being Chip Kelly than Chip Kelly. And I think that's what's changed with him. It's not that he's forgotten stuff or gotten worse as a tactician or a coach. It's that everyone else has gotten better around him. That's the problem with Chip Kelly. I think Lanning is a great success story of even at a job as good as Oregon. They identified a young coordinator at a national championship winning program that was dynamic, that had a clear vision, that could communicate that vision, and is also just a really good football coach. And they landed a pretty big fish in Dan Lanning, which at the time you're thinking, well, maybe he's good, maybe he's not. He's a coordinator. He's never been a head coach.
Right.
Who knows? I'm looking at Indiana, Mississippi State, maybe even UCLA, Michigan State. And I do think, Hutton, they can go get a current head coach somewhere at those jobs. But I still look at those jobs and think, I would be looking for that next Lanning. I know there's going to be group of 5 head coaches you could target. There may be even a recently fired coach. That's an option for you. But I would look for that guy also. That's key for some of these jobs.
You're looking for the Deion Sanders version. Speaking of Lanning, Colorado getting and having the sense to hire Deion Sanders has been great for the perception of where he's taking this program in year one. And I've said throughout the entire offseason and until right now, he's saying it's rare that I see Deion saying something that I disagree with or saying like he's not hitting the right tone or sentiment, or he's got it totally wrong. So the theft that took place whenever Colorado played UCLA out in California, turns out they're UCLA recruits, high schoolers, and they'll be punished. They're wearing you've got criticism of the Colorado players wearing jewelry into the locker room or whatever and leaving it there. Deion yesterday sends again the right tone here. Quote, let's not crucify and punish these high school kids. Whatever the punishment that comes along with it, let it be that. Community service, whatever it is, but let's not abort the rest of their opportunities, their lives, because of this mistake. They're kids. They made a stupid, dumb, idiotic mistake. Guess what? When I was 17, 18, so did I, so did you. I'm praying for those kids. This was the same sentiment whenever we saw what happened to Travis Hunter earlier this year on the hit. And for all the boasting and the chest out and saying, look at us, if you doubted us, do you believe? I believe that he's hitting the right message and sending the right message through the questions that he's asked, including whenever he's asked about Texas A&M. And I'll admit I'm a bit surprised by it because it's been a lot of boasting and, hey, you guys forgot about us or you wrote us off, looking at Ed Werder acting like he writes the columns that said that they were over under 2 wins in 2023 or whatever the Vegas line was. In this case, he's saying, hey, we're not making excuses. They made a mistake. We're not looking for further punishment. Let the legal things play out, and we're going to move on. And he also said, for those criticizing the players for wearing jewelry in the locker room, if your car is burglarized, why are you driving someplace where someone's taking things out of your car? It was, I thought, a common sense approach from Deion in this case.
And he was very cool about it and said a lot of good things. One of my first thoughts about this was, how good are these recruits? And is Deion Sanders also recruiting them?
Maybe.
And what a hell of a story, though, if two of these kids end up going to Colorado and being model citizens in Boulder for Deion Sanders, playing for him, after having robbed Deion's team on a recruiting trip to UCLA. Like that, but look, that is,
if he's
people might
recruiting high
laugh
school
at that,
kids, that's very rare.
To spit in the face of Jim Harbaugh here, that's an American story. That's a story of overcoming. These are guys who were committing crimes, as stealing jewelry out of a locker room on a recruiting visit to UCLA, that Deion then accepted, took into his program, and transformed them into not just great football players, but guys who don't steal things out of locker rooms. That's a pretty cool story. Sign me up for that one.
Yep, agreed.
So I don't know anything about the guys who actually did it, but I'd like to know what their star rating was and whether or not Deion wants them as players.
And if maybe he wants them in the transfer portal later.
Well, remember he talked about guys who had to fight for a meal, that you wanted certain positions?
Certain positions.
Hey,
Clay Travis.
Could be some of these kids.
He joins us next. We'll discuss the possible injunction that's coming for Harbaugh.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this, because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA, because let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist
question
thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today. So I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Coming at you live from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic with Hunt and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network with the founder of OutKick. Clay Travis joins us. Clay, hope things are well. And have you paid your $39.75 that you owed the IRS in federal income tax return?
I have. I sent
Wow.
a check in to cover my full bill according to our esteemed IRS tax scholars. I paid over $10 million in tax the past 2 years, and they said that I owe $39.75. So I have no idea where that calculation came from or how I made. I don't know what the percentage is when you pay over $10 million in taxes and they decide that you owe 75 cents. I would guess that's like the 99.99 percentile. But this is your tax dollars at work investigating someone who is funding a huge part of the government relative to what most people pay. So yeah, I'm under the microscope from IRS perspective.
I feel like I'm talking to a fine oil painting of Clay Travis in the middle of us here with this
beautiful.
This photo.
Beautiful
It's a
headshot.
work of art. I hang this thing in the Louvre. So I feel like Jimbo Fisher's going to have some taxes to pay for a while now. $7.25 million a year for the next 8 years, and that's on top of a lot of money coming before that with this buyout. Clay, are buyouts with coaches in college football, has it gotten completely out of control? Is there a way to wean athletic departments off of this, or is it just so far down this avenue that there's no doing a U-turn on it?
Well, I mean, I think it's actually just evidence of how much a coach matters. And there's only about, I don't know how many you could name, if we sat down and we said, okay, how many college football coaches can you point to and say, that guy is really, really good, and no matter where he goes, he'll win at a high level? I think probably the answer is 10 or less. And the reason why the Jimbo Fisher had the value that he did is because he had won a national championship at Florida State, and Texas A&M bought into the idea that he would be able to do the same thing for them that he did for Florida State. Now, the catch there was Jimbo never had a Jameis Winston caliber quarterback that is a first round, top of the first round caliber talent. And he did at FSU. And if you look at Jimbo Fisher's tenure at Florida State, there's the Jimbo Fisher with Jameis Winston performance, and then there's the non-Jameis Winston performance, and there had been a pretty substantial drop-off. And I would guess that Kellen Mond is probably the best quarterback that Jimbo Fisher had at Texas A&M, and that is when he had his most success. But by and large, he wasn't able to find a guy that would get him over the proverbial hump to the next level. And so now Texas A&M's back on the market trying to figure out whether there is a guy out there who can be the proverbial difference maker for them.
Clay Travis with us. Clay, I saw your comments on X about Washington State, Oregon State, and the interesting case law that can come from the ruling that they control and have the power over, negotiating power over the Pac-12 currently. What comes of this, and what do you make of the millions that they could earn as a duo instead of the group that was a part of the have-nots?
So once the teams there used to be 12 teams. And the Pac-12 obviously set the precedent when UCLA and USC announced they were leaving the conference, that they immediately rescinded their ability to vote on conference-related issues. And that makes sense, right? Like, you wouldn't want two different teams out there that have abandoned the conference to be voting on the future of the conference. Well, Oregon, and I'm simplifying here, but Oregon State and Washington State essentially said, wait a minute, we've got 8 other teams that have decided to leave the Pac-12. We want to follow the same precedent as we did for UCLA and USC. And so they're now saying there's only 2 members of the Pac-12 remaining, and we should control the decisions that the conference makes going forward, potentially including the distribution of hundreds of millions of dollars in payments, and maybe also the assets that the Pac-12 would have going forward. And I would suspect that this is going to end in a pretty lucrative settlement being paid by the schools that are all leaving the Pac-12 to the 2 schools that are remaining.
Clay, with Michigan and what comes on Friday with this hearing on a possible temporary restraining order, what do you think happens here? And do you believe the argument from Michigan will be, hey, there's an ongoing investigation, you've punished us way too early based on what the NCAA is doing, and will the Big Ten, on Petitti's case, say, hey, we're not punishing based on the rule that the NCAA is investigating, we're punishing based on a policy of sportsmanship? Who wins and why?
I think that Michigan should have won if I were the judge that was reviewing this case, but Michigan didn't win before the Penn State game. And what Michigan is seeking is a temporary restraining order. So they want an injunction put in place by this judge to prohibit the Big Ten from enforcing its penalty against Jim Harbaugh. And in order to get that temporary restraining order, they have to show that there would be irreparable harm and that there's a likelihood that they're going to win this case on the merits later. To me, the irreparable harm standard is pretty easily met, because if Jim Harbaugh is not able to coach on the sideline, that is a massively impactful outcome that can't ever be fixed. Once the game is played and he's not there, then the damage has been done, and so the harm has occurred. I think, though, once the judge allowed the Penn State game to be played without Jim Harbaugh involved in the game, it's hard to then say, oh, and now I'm going to find that there needs to be a TRO, because there's already been a harm perpetrated upon Harbaugh in that he was not allowed to coach for that game against Penn State. So I think what's likely to happen is the Big Ten is going to win this ruling, and then we'll see where Michigan appeals from there, and whether there is any ability for Harbaugh. I think the chances of him coaching against Maryland are very slim. But the question would be, could he be back potentially for the big game against Ohio State? If I were betting now, I would say he's not going to be back. But if I'd been betting, to be fair, before this TRO was officially filed, I would have bet on the Washtenaw County judge finding that there was, in fact, a need for an injunction and issuing a temporary restraining order. So I'm surprised she didn't, but the fact that she didn't makes it seem more likely than not that she is not going to take any action going forward. And we'll have to see who Michigan appeals to and how that works out. But I would bet that he will not be on the sideline for the Maryland game.
And Clay, how much do you believe Petitti will end up regretting doing this in the moment that he's done it?
Well, I think one of the problems is when you get caught in the frenzy of the immediate emotions of a moment, oftentimes you make a poor decision going forward. And that's where, at its most basic degree, what you're paying somebody to be the Big Ten commissioner for is not to go out and grip and grin at men's diving competitions or make sure that the field hockey fields are respected by showing up for their championship game. It is to actually make the best interest in the decision of a conference, not only in the immediate moment, but for the years ahead. And what you have to be careful of is what the precedents are that you set. And I think, based on my reading of not only the decision in the suspension of Harbaugh, but also in the filings that the guys have made in these court cases. I think that the Big Ten commissioner is making a short-sighted decision designed to curry favor in the short term, but set a poor precedent going forward as it pertains to what penalties will look like.
Clay, I've gone from believing that the first 3-game suspension, the first 3 games of the year for Harbaugh, I thought all this stuff with the NCAA, the headache with that, this is going to push him to taking an NFL job this offseason. Maybe it ends up being the Raiders or someone else. Now I've gone around that thinking all of this support of Harbaugh and all of this emotion and passion and how this has galvanized Michigan, I don't think he's going anywhere now. I think he's going to be loyal to the people that have been loyal to him through all of this. What do you think about what's next for Jim Harbaugh and the chances of him jumping at an NFL job after this season?
Well, one, I think there's an argument to be made, and I wondered whether Michigan would even file the appeal, and I think they wanted to preserve a record and act like they're upset. I think there's an argument you can make that in suspending Harbaugh for 3 games, this may not be the worst thing for Michigan, because in the event that the suspension stays in effect, Michigan can argue that they've already been punished for this incident when the NCAA tries to take their bite of the apple or the Big Ten looks at it down the road. In other words, they can say this, which is, I think, a fairly inconsequential punishment. I think it actually, you could argue, benefits Michigan because it fires them up and they're going to play harder. But in the meantime, all of the work of putting the game plan in place for the game has already taken place. So there is no major decisions that has to be made. I know you have to decide to go for it on 4th down or not, or whatever those scenarios are, but you can almost talk through them in the week. But putting in the game plan, there's a rally around the coach effect. And so I wonder whether in the long run, Michigan's going to look at this and say, you know what, it's actually beneficial to us because we got a relatively inconsequential punishment. If they beat Maryland, which I think they will Saturday, and then they beat Ohio State, which I think they will the Saturday after, then you have the incredible moment where Jim Harbaugh could be presented with the Big Ten trophy by Tony Petitti, and there's already been a rendering of a judgment based on this incident. And so Michigan can then argue in the event that any other future punishment tries to come, wait a minute, we've already served our punishment for this, and there may not have been much of a consequence going forward.
Clay, I'm amazed at the amount of silence from the Las Vegas Aces and the WNBA since you posed the challenge to them with a high school boys state championship team playing them in a game after the initial chirping. 2-part question. Do you think that the Las Vegas Aces organization or the WNBA has placed a gag order on their players to not respond to you on social media and not talk about this at all? And 2, would this hypothetical game between a high school boys state championship team and the WNBA champion be the most watched WNBA event of all time?
First part, remember, I didn't start this. I gave my opinion back in, I think it was February, that a boys high school team would beat the WNBA champs, boys high school state champ of, I think I said like of most states. There are probably some small states, Wyoming, Rhode Island, where the teams aren't that great. I'm not trying to cast aspersion on state championship teams in Wyoming or Rhode Island, but just the bigger the population of a state is, the higher the quality in general of the basketball teams would likely be in that state because there's just more kids to pick from. The state champion of California or Texas or Florida would most often beat the state champion of, Missouri, right? That would be my general guess. Okay. So Chelsea, I think her name's Chelsea Gray. I don't know who she is, but she called me a dumbass for that opinion. And look, I mean, people are entitled to think I'm a dumbass for any number of opinions I share. That's certainly part of the marketplace of ideas. Call me whatever.
But you responded with a challenge to that, right?
Yeah, but I responded. I literally put my money where my mouth is, and I said, I'll give you $1 million if you can beat the team that I pick. And I'm not even taking any money. I said, I'll give the $1 million in the event that I win. I'll give the $1 million that WNBA team is paying to me to all those boys that are on the team. Like, I'm not even I'm betting money without actually getting any payoff. And then another group, Bet Online, came forward and said, hey, we'll even pay the $1 million for the WNBA team. So they have no risk at all. All they have to do is win the game, and they get $1 million, and they don't lose anything if they lose. And they still haven't responded. So I think the boys team would obliterate them. That's my opinion. And I suspect that the reason they're not saying anything back is because I painted them into a corner, and they secretly recognize that I am correct and that they would get dominated in a game of this magnitude. And yes, if it happened, it would be the most watched WNBA game of all time. I have zero doubt this would be a social media phenomenon. This would be a message board extravaganza. Everybody who is in some way interested in women's basketball, men's basketball, and the idea of, hey, a boy who decides to be a girl can become a women's champion, which is part of what prompted this discussion in the first place, I think would tune in.
I think it should be pay-per-view, and I think we should charge $39.75, which is what the IRS is charging Clay in order to tune in.
Very symbolic.
Yes,
with that rate.
I think if we put it on pay-per-view, we would make tens of millions of dollars from people who would pay to watch this game.
Battle of the Sexes Part 2.
Clay,
thanks so much,
thank
man.
you, man.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate y'all. Thanks a lot.
There's Clay Travis. Coming up, Mark Harris of OutKick.com. PGA Tour in financial trouble? That's next.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on. Coming up, we discuss hot seats in the Power Five and discuss who's next in the SEC after we've seen two coaches already been told to leave, getting some buyouts along the way.
You think they were asked to leave or told to leave?
Told.
We'd like for you to leave now and get your stuff out of your office within the next 2 days.
Yeah.
Or do they come in and say, now you leave this moment, get out of here?
Coach, it didn't matter what was going to happen yesterday in the game, win or lose. We'd already decided you were out.
Our accountant will be in touch about your $7.25 million annual payment that will be divvying out to you from here on out, Jimbo.
Speaking of payments and investors and other things.
A lot of payments.
Financially. PGA Tour's certainly in the middle of all that. Mark Harris has us covered at OutKick.com with all of the latest news with this. Mark, thank you for the time, man. Hope things are well.
Appreciate it. Hope you guys are doing well, too.
Yeah, man. So when are we going to learn about the potential investors that the PGA Tour is deciding on currently?
Yeah, it's interesting. They send out that memo yesterday, and they have an outline saying outside investors. They've acknowledged them now twice in their last two memos sent out to the players on tour. The fact that they're acknowledging that is kind of a red flag, you could say. And then you have Rory McIlroy resign from his position on the board yesterday, one day after that memo was sent out, and they had their 6 to 7 hour long meeting. And I think it signals the Rory stepping down. I think it signals that one of two things could kind of play out here soon or later. Maybe they sat in that meeting and there's something inevitable happening with the Saudis that's going through sooner rather than later. And Rory's waving the white flag. He fought the fight against Liv and the PIF as long as possible. Now he's saying, okay, I'm done with this. I'm going to go focus on golf. I haven't won a major in 10 years. I'd like to do that. And then the other thing is maybe he sat in that meeting and got sick of it and because there's no progress to be reported. It's been over 160 days since Yasir and Jay Monahan sat on MSNBC and said, we've reached this framework agreement. And now not a lot of people noticed yesterday, but the language in that memo went from framework agreement to they're working on a definitive agreement, which I guess in business and legal talk, those are two different things, but that's kind of a new wrinkle in this never-ending wrinkle cycle.
Rory's been the most vocal with this, and if he's not willing to sit on the player policy board, doesn't that mean whoever is there is going to see the same results and certainly see the results that favor whatever decision Monahan and others want to make instead of having to at least find some middle ground with a player that is sitting in that position for good reason? It's more than just optics. It's because he represents the other side of the argument.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be interesting because Tiger Woods and Patrick Cantlay are kind of the two biggest names on that board. So they're going to have a say in that appointment and of the new position that Rory just stepped down from. So that's a good point you raised, that they have to pick the right guy for that. Now, like I said, it could be the point now where whoever goes, there's not really a say. And Rory kind of came to that conclusion that, look, I can do this. I've done this for over a year now, officially in that position. And well before that, unofficially, carrying as much water for the tour as anybody imaginable. And the difference between like the Rory and the Tigers of it, Rory's obviously the most influential in the world, not named Tiger, but Tiger isn't playing every week. He's not stepping in front of a mic every week. So Rory had to take the brunt of all the excuses, all the questions from every player on tour. And he was, Monahan's right-hand man for the better part of 18 to 24 months. And then they sit on MSNBC and they say this framework agreement, and he's the sacrificial lamb. And those were his own words. So they're going to have to nitpick if they're still, battling this, if there's still a majority that doesn't want to see this deal go through. But I think odds are that Rory stepping down may signal that it's closer to being done than not.
And I think anybody can sort of cold takes expose this deal and go back and play old clips of Rory and make him look dumb with the eventual merger and all that. But I feel like he really helped himself when this news initially came down, because he just came right out and said it. You mentioned, Mark, the sacrificial lamb, comment. I feel like I'm the sacrificial lamb here. I was told one thing and fought the good fight, and then the whole time there was something else going on. He even said, hey, in the end, money talks. They just decided that it was going to be a lot easier to not fight all of this money in court and everything else they're doing, and instead let them join up, and that's what won the day. When we talk about legacy with Rory, is how he's handled this after the merger's been announced, is that going to be a big part in helping his legacy moving forward?
I think it is. I actually published a column on OutKick about 2 hours ago, kind of touching on that, where right now, this is the reality now. Like you said, reality 6 months ago, he handled himself one way, and so did Jay Monahan, and now times have changed, and that's just how the world works. And Rory's kind of gotten out in front of that. I think a lot of people at the jump of Liv were on top of Rory because he was just so adamantly against it. But now he's come to the realization, like, the Saudis' pockets are the deepest in the world. It is what it is. And in 2 weeks' time, no matter kind of what happens, nobody's going to remember Rory stepped down from the policy board. They're gonna remember how many wins he has, what he's done in the majors. And it's like I said, we're coming up on the decade-long streak of him not winning a major. He last won a major at the 2014 PGA Championship, which if you would have said he would only have 4 majors between now and then, back then, you would have been ridiculed. I mean, people would have taken that bet for millions of dollars. He just hasn't had it. So it's going to be interesting to see if that distraction that he had on the policy board, being on a member of that, was a good thing, because he actually did perform well in majors this year outside of Augusta, better than he has in a long time, actually. So it's going to be interesting to see if he thinks a little bit too much on golf this upcoming year around, which we're 120 some odd days from the Masters. So if he slips on a green jacket, I think nobody will remember this day on November 15th when he's no longer on the board.
Live sports have been, streaming for a while, but we continue to monitor the biggest streamers and what they're doing to add sports and live sports to bring people there all at once. I'm curious about Netflix. I've seen clips from their live event. It looked entertaining. I love the Full Swing series, but when you look at Netflix, someone who's not really gotten into live events that much, but they're starting to dip their toes there, and they're really looking at golf as an avenue to do that. If you saw it, Mark, what'd you think about their live event? What'd you think about Full Swing? And what do you make of Netflix possibly being a player with live golf?
Yeah, I'm with you. I've seen clips. I did not tune in live. I might go back and watch kind of the replay, but I think they did do it right. Incorporating the F1, obviously that was the huge series they had. I think launched the first season was maybe like peak COVID, and everybody had to watch something, and they did just an unbelievable job with that. That now you have hundreds of thousands of F1 fans living in the States. You got races in Vegas and Austin and Miami. So they incorporated those guys really, really well, and they got big names to come over and do it. Justin Thomas, Max Homa, Tony Finau and Ricky Fowler were all in it. Max Homa and Justin Thomas were in South Africa like 3 days ago. Max Homa won a tournament. He flies across the world to play in this thing. I think Netflix, like I said, I think they've just picked their market really well. I think they're 2 for 2 on their series, the Full Swing and the Drive to Survive thing, and then doing the combo and kind of testing the live thing out. Like you said, it's so tough to do the live sports thing, even on a stream thing where everybody seemingly has Netflix. Just kind of I think it's a good experiment that they kind of put together. We'll see, I guess, if we get streaming numbers on that, kind of see if anybody was interested. But definitely as a promo for the next season of Full Swing and stuff, I think it was a wise decision on their part.
You know, Mark Harris with us, OutKick.com. Maybe this is just the common sense thought process here, but PGA Tour in Monahan, they're acknowledging outside investors, not Saudi, right? Any outside investor that's entering this would have Saudi backing and approval, though, because Saudi's running this, even if the perception is it's the PGA Tour, right?
Yeah, you would imagine, and that's kind of the mystery. That's kind of the mystery that nobody seems to have the answer. Is they've acknowledged these outside investors twice now in memos to players that have been picked up by the media, and nobody knows if it is an add-on to the Saudi investment, if they're going to work hand in hand. Obviously, the Saudis' pockets are deeper than the others, or this is the PGA Tour saying like, hey, we got big money problems where maybe these investors, a lot of these American investors, they're going to. You even have one called Friends of Golf, and nobody knows who it is. It just says influential individuals. They're all just going to pile their money together. Like, hey, we can reach this level. It's not going to be the Saudi level. The Saudis can keep upping it. But maybe Monahan says, hey, we've got this money, and we cast the Saudis aside. But everybody has some kind of finger within the Saudi, investment, the PIF. So, yeah, if you take a deep dive into it, surely there's got to be Saudi approval with any of it for sure.
Yeah, some way they're going to have that investment from Saudi in, and it either comes through the back door, which is through these different investors or companies or whatever this is, or it's just the approval, and you have a super PAC, for lack of a better term, of the money that's in a pool.
Right.
What got us to this point financially with them?
I don't know. That's kind of the thing that's on everybody's mind is it's, crazy tinfoil hat. It's almost like Monahan, does this stuff with the Saudis, goes on TV and talks about it. And now he's like, hey, look, he's got these investors from all over the world and in America that want to get in on this. Look at us. We've got, good problems to have. So who knows? It's just there's so many moving pieces from that regard from the investment. There's no numbers attached. The Saudi PIF, kind of the rumored, highly reported number is like $2 billion. That gets you a pretty big seat at the table of professional golf. And I think another way to look at it too is in today's mediascape, it's been 160 days since June 6th when they made that announcement. And they said, we've agreed to this framework. So people respected, okay, I know there was golf tournaments still to be played, but it seemed like, we just needed the I's dotted and the T's crossed. It has taken a long time, and I know it's reshaping the world of professional golf as we've always known it. But I think there is a point of taking too much time, especially in today's climate, to where the Saudis or other investors could be sick of it. And I know for damn sure that golf fans and reporters like me are sick of talking about money, and we just kind of want to focus on a little bit of golf here and there.
Yep. Well, let's. I got one big golf question for you. We haven't had a chance to talk to you since the Ryder Cup. We don't often talk about fallout from events, but I haven't heard a lot about the fallout from what was just a disastrous performance by the Americans in that competition. Has there been fallout from what we saw?
Not that I've really seen. I mean, interestingly, I think the Americans kind of spun it, at least American golf fans kind of spun it to where like, hey, maybe this Max Homa guy's pretty good. He's been electric. Like I said, he was playing in South Africa. He won. So I think, the days after, there was certainly fallout. I mean, it was a disaster as soon as the Americans got off the bus in Rome. I mean, it was just a bloodbath, which I did not expect it to be. I thought the Americans were going to finally break that 30-year streak and do something special over there. But now we get to wait another 3.5 years before we get another chance on European soil. But yeah, I think the positive way to look at it is you had some guys kind of emerge, and you had some guys that most definitely did not. Max Homa was kind of the hot pick right now for having a big year. He's been horrific in majors throughout his entire career. He self-admits that every interview he does, basically. So we'll see if he can kind of turn that momentum into the Ryder Cup. Obviously, that gives you a ton of confidence. Maybe he can turn it into maybe not a major win, but just being in the final couple pairings in a major. He hadn't checked that off his list yet because the dude's a dog. I mean, he's great. So we'll see what he cooks up this year.
Check out Mark on social at @itismarkharris, and you can read his great work at OutKick.com. Mark, thank you for the insight here and solid work on all of this at OutKick.
I appreciate it. Thank you, fellas.
Yeah, man.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks for joining us. There's Mark Harris there. Always a great visit with him. Chad,
can't beat him, join him. That's basically what Rory said about all of it. We're not going to fight this money forever, so let's let him in.
Yeah, but recently he's resigning. He's like, honestly, no, I haven't enjoyed being on this council. Because I think the sentiment is they're going to do whatever they want to anyway. And
right.
They're being used as figureheads.
I don't blame them one bit.
Yeah. And also, like, the sentiment is now, we went from, the players are competing against each other, the Masters, where you have the potential of, you have the winner being a part of the live golf, and it ends up being John Rahm. And now it's just kind of like,
everybody's the same.
Whoever wins is whatever.
Yeah, we're done with the division now. It's just everybody's under Saudi Arabia. We're all in this together.
It's not just golf. We could point to on that, Chad.
It's all for the kingdom.
Oil money certainly played a factor in the buyout for Jimbo Fisher. And we'll ask Michael Bratton about who replaces him and other openings we could see across the SEC, plus Georgia, the new number 1.
Dabo Swinney ripping his own fans. Dabo Swinney at Clemson is, I don't know, they tell me that he's the guy that doesn't like the transfer portal because he's made some comments that weren't exactly supportive of it. Dabo Swinney has done a job at Clemson that very few thought could be done. Clemson is a town about this big. Well, I better do this, not that, because that's like a white power sign idiots say. But it's about that big. The state is South Carolina. The state is not Clemson. But Dabo Swinney put Clemson in rarefied air. If you, a couple years ago, were going to name me the 3 best college football teams before Georgia's run here, you'd say Alabama, Ohio State, and Clemson. That's kind of who it always came down to. It felt like. So Dabo Swinney is now the victim of something that is good in one way, but it's bad in another. Incredible expectations of your fan base, meaning 10-2 ain't good enough. It just ain't. You can say whatever you want, but it just ain't. We got to be better. What? We're not in the college football playoff? What? We're not winning a national champion? What? We're 4-2? That's only winning 67% of our games? Here's what Dabo had to say. If you don't go undefeated, people say you're losers, that you're terrible. Let me tell you something. This is why football coaches for years and years and years and years fought the college football playoff. We're at a point in time, and I hate that, where people, if you don't go undefeated, you're losers. You're terrible. It's just a terrible mindset. Honestly, maybe we need to lose a few games and lighten up the bandwagon. Sometimes the bandwagon get a little full. That's the one good thing about going through a little bit of so-called adversity, is that you really find out who's with you and who's not. That's all crap. Let me explain to you Dabo Swinney's day, can I? Dabo Swinney probably wakes up around 5:30. Dabo Swinney smokes shit, shower, shave, shampoo, goes to the office. Probably has a meeting at 7. Dabo Swinney then is probably in different meetings with players or recruits, or maybe the administration, and maybe watching film, whatever. Then he has practice. Then after practice, he's doing the same thing. Then in the evening, he's making phone calls. Probably goes home around 10. At no point in time in his day, his week, his month, his year, is he finding out who's with us and who's not with us. It's not like there's a list. Now, maybe you find out what media member wants to rip you, but on a daily basis, a monthly basis, you're not finding out any of this crap. It's very simple. Coaches, if you want to know who's with you, understand that when you lose, nobody's really with you. If you want to know who's really with you, win. And then everybody's really with you. It's literally that simple. As my father used to say to me, Dan, we're with you, win or tie, and we ain't so sure about the tie. So shut up with that stuff, win some football games, and don't sweat it. Seriously, do yourself a favor. Work hard, grab yourself a glass of wine, go sit in your chair, and read a book instead of being on social media or worrying about who is with you and who is not with you.
Just like that, final hour is here on the Wednesday edition. Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick network. Been a fast-paced show today. If you missed portions of it, you can see it online right now through YouTube. Search out OutKick. Chad's in the chat live with us, and you can check out clips and all of the live and on-demand shows. OutKick.com.
Chat's
and
good.
the
Chat's
OutKick
good.
channel.
A lot of people mad at Clay about his challenge to the WNBA on that.
Really?
Yeah. I said, look, Clay said something. The lady called him a dumbass, and he came back with a challenge, and they went silent. I don't know why you're mad at him. Be mad at her and the Aces for not responding.
Respond with another challenge. Let's make it two.
I gave the response that would have been funny from her to Clay. That someone should have written this response to Clay. This is another reason to get in the chat. If you want to get in the chat, you can see my response. I would have respected this response back and laughed at it, and that would have gotten a ton of retweets.
Yes.
Had she put that, but instead she said nothing, and then the WNBA has gone silent.
Again, go to YouTube. You can search out OutKick. Find us there. If you're listening to this great radio partner, we say thank you as well. Also say thanks to Michael Bratton, SEC Mike, for joining us right now as we kick off hour number 3. Host of the SEC podcast. Michael, good to see you, man. Hope things are well.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to join you, boys.
No doubt. Hey, so Jimbo Fisher's out. Buyout paid. Or will be paid in full. Does A&M have their guy? Do they have someone in mind immediately by making this move? Or is this just, either way, he's being paid to fail and we're done with it?
Well, first of all, let me just say what a sad day it is for me. I've kind of made a career of making fun of Jimbo Fisher and his failures as a head coach. So it is a devastating week
Mike,
for me.
now you can make fun of him on TV. Right now, that's where we'll just move on to whatever his assessments are on TV. You can make fun of his television work once he gets a TV gig.
Oh, I'm hoping he goes to work for Nick Saban washing his car like Butch Jones used to do.
That's a possibility too.
But the crazy thing is this buyout has no
wax
offset.
on, wax
there
off.
is no offset. So if he takes another job, he still gets this money. That's nuts.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, based on his recent history there at A&M, I don't think he's a candidate anywhere else, sadly. But yeah, I mean, I don't think A&M has a candidate at this point in time, but I do like the fact that they made this move when they made it. Well, I mean, they should have made it last year. Let's be honest. That's what I've been saying, and they would have probably had a quality coach by now. But it is what it is, and the reason that you don't wait to the end of the season to recruiting, but even more importantly in today's college football is you have got to get ahead of the transfer portal, and that's coming quick. That's December 4th. I think by the end of the regular season, they need to have a head coach the following week. And if you would have fired Jimbo at the deadline, you probably wouldn't have had a quality candidate lined up. So I don't have a ton of faith in Ross Bjork to make an excellent hire, but he's given himself at least some leeway, given that he's got several weeks before the deadline I'm putting out there.
Yeah, and I mean, I like the thought there. I'm curious, like, what level coach is that to secure the portal aspect of what you're saying, and maybe more importantly, keep the talent that you currently have that's currently being recruited by other programs to bolt now, maybe before now, from leaving, keeping things in College Station to have the most success you can have in year one.
Yeah, and then there's another aspect to all this is NIL, and I don't know that, obviously they don't leak the information of these contracts, but a lot of these guys are essentially, I don't want to say stuck, but tied to the school. They can transfer if they want, but they can't transfer their NIL rights. So that's also something to consider. We may not have a mass exodus of all these great players at A&M because, they're free to go, but they may not be able to make it up in NIL. So I think that's going to be something really interesting to see if no big name players exit the program, regardless of who the coach is. I have to believe that is tied to NIL.
Well, and we see it all the time that one coach fails and then you go the opposite route. Defensive guy fails, we got to get the young gun offensive coordinator. Offensive guy fails, we need someone with structure and that's more disciplined, defensive-minded. What's the opposite of Jimbo? Cheap? I mean, what does A&M do to counter what they just did? To me, it's go hire Jeff Traylor on the cheap with no buyout and let him assemble a staff with some money, but you almost go that group of 5 route, right? We had Billy Lucci on earlier this week, and that's what he brought up immediately. He said, I think it's going to be a group of 5 level coach this go around. What do you think about that approach now for A&M to go the complete opposite direction? We're not going to fly around the country trying to woo some big name. We're going to go get someone who really wants to be here that's going to earn the money that we start to pay them.
Yeah, the opposite of Jimbo Fisher is a good coach. So that's what we need. We need just a solid football coach, someone that's not going to – you don't have to win the press conference. I think A&M was a little obsessed with winning the press conference when they hired Jimbo, and it was style over substance. We need to go 180, like you're saying. And, Jeff Traylor makes a ton of sense. He's well respected in that state. I think Lance Leipold at Kansas, surely you can outbid Kansas. And I know you said G5, but to me, Big 12 is basically G5 once Texas and Oklahoma leave. So can you get a guy like that? Again, A&M fans are probably not going to be wowed by that. Even a Willie Fritz, who is doing a tremendous job at Tulane. Now that obviously is a G5, but just in that vein, someone that you may not be overly thrilled when you sign them, but you give them this roster that they currently have in College Station, it can be a 180 turnaround. And I'm not saying win a national championship. Sadly, I don't think that should be A&M's goal right now. The goal should be a consistent 9 to 10 win program, which, to my knowledge, they have never been, at least in my lifetime.
Yeah, but I think and I agree with you. The goal now should be consistent. Look at what happened to Florida State though as soon as Jimbo left. If we were to go the opposite, any coach is going to be the opposite of the hire, because the opposite is going to be the resume that Jimbo came in with and what he was paid for based on the resume, being a national championship winning coach. Those are few and far between right now. Either way, the guys are going to get paid and they're going to be rumored to leave. They're going to get extensions and buyouts are going to go up. I'm intrigued, though, to see the direction of the offense and the direction of the mentality and I guess the overall makeup of the new guy versus Jimbo Fisher that was so much against doing anything other than his way and knowing everything instead of not admitting that things aren't working out as they should be based on his offense.
Yeah, his offense was stuck in 2013, wasn't it? So, again, maybe you go out and hire an offensive innovator like a Jamie Chadwell. I know he's been rumored. Who knows? I think these are all just people throwing stuff against the wall. But someone like that, someone that has kind of dominated a lower level, but is fun, is innovative, and has to just – I'm always curious what these guys will do when they actually have real talent to work with. And that may be a job out of reach for a guy like Chadwell, but who knows? I think Tennessee fans probably thought their job was too good for Josh Heupel. But then once you get him in there and that you put in that system,
that's right.
Now he's regarded as one of the best coaches in the conference. So I don't know that I necessarily believe that. I think if you get an innovative offensive mind, I think you run with it.
Yeah, and you never know until you see it, right? Josh Heupel at Tennessee has worked, but you wouldn't have known that until you took a chance on it and saw it. We have seen Dan Mullen at Mississippi State, and we saw it work before. Is that a route they should go again?
No, because I just don't think you can go back to the well like that. Now, if Mississippi State could get him, yeah. But I don't know if you've seen the comments already today. That Dan Mullen basically said, you never say never, but probably not. So it's interesting that he's kind of weighing in on it. I think Dan Mullen makes all the sense in the world for Arkansas, which I realize that job's not even open yet, but it likely will be here in the coming days. I think Dan Mullen's he's better than half the coaches in the SEC right now. So I think that'd be a tremendous hire for anybody. If Mississippi State can get him, go get him. But it seems heck, half the time he was there, he was trying to leave there. So I don't think he's got any desire to go back to Starkville.
How good of a job is Arkansas? I feel like that's a question we could ask in every coaching cycle when they fire someone and go, because we know they have resources. They have an entire state that's galvanized behind them. They have money in their alumni base. But where are they in the SEC really, and what kind of coach are they going to attract?
Yeah, I think it's a bottom third job, and that's normally in most conferences you're a bottom third job. It's because you got an awful program. I'm not saying Arkansas is awful, but the one thing you didn't reference there, which is also true of Arkansas, is they have wild expectations for some reason. I mean, they annually have the sixth 7th best roster in the West, yet they anticipate you to punch above your weight and to battle with some of the better teams in the SEC West. And unless you have that roster, the players matter more than coaches. Over 70% of SEC games are won by the better recruiter. And Arkansas, just that state, everything they do have going for them, what they don't have is a rich talent base. So you got to go outside your state to recruit. I think it's a bottom third job in the SEC, despite the passion of the fans, the donors, like you said, facilities. They have all that. You get someone to campus up there, it's a wonderful place to go to school, play football, but it's just so demanding up there. They just churn these coaches out.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated too by that mindset. If you don't have high expectations, you're Vandy, right? And also, Arkansas to me is a very specific way to win in the conference. And they had expectations just like Kentucky did, Will Levis's final year at Kentucky going into the season based on what they had done the year prior. And Pittman, we can tie Coach O into this as well at LSU. Fit, culture, overall just perception of how he fit that particular university and program. Everyone's saying Sam Pittman's perfect for Arkansas. And now KJ Jefferson, and we have not seen that. And I do think there is a certain type of coach, though, that they have to hire. It can't be the opposite of Sam Pittman, given the fact that we have seen the opposite of Sam Pittman prior to his hire and how bad and awful it was.
Well, let me throw another name at you here. And this is not someone that is all on the hot seat. This is a name of someone in the SEC that could strike while the iron is hot. And that's Eli Drinkwitz. They're going to go 10-2. All right? It's going to happen. They got Florida at home. They got Arkansas to close out the season. He hasn't had a winning season yet at Missouri. But we've seen coaches have a mammoth season for their respective program that program rarely has, and they bolt for greener pastures. I'm curious if a job opens up or an opportunity that Eli would look at and say, now's the time to go try something else. Do you see that as a possibility?
Yeah, absolutely, because he's tried to do it before, and his team didn't live up to the hype, and it just didn't happen. So he was very interested in that Auburn job that ultimately went to Hugh
That's
Freeze.
right,
so, yeah. I mean, certainly, I think that's pretty astute. I mean, that's something that we kind of referenced on our last show. If there is a coach that no one's talking about, not saying obviously he's not getting fired, he's having a banner year there, but one coaching job that could come open, I think it could be Eli Drinkwitz. And I've heard some rocky things with his relationship with the AD as well, so you kind of add that to it. And again, he's raising the expectations at Missouri, kind of like Shane Beamer has done at South Carolina. Then you dip, all of a sudden people start questioning, is this really the guy for the job? But I thought that was hilarious when Beamer kind of got thrown into the Mississippi State mix. Why in the world would he go there? I think he's got a better job, but some of these coaches, they want to stay one step ahead of getting fired. So, yeah, I mean, I certainly think I would be surprised if he's not at least somewhat on the radar for even Texas A&M.
Well, he went from $4 to $6 million in the bump and pay recently. And I wonder, could the Auburn version this year for him be Florida?
I mean, are we getting rid of Billy Napier already? I mean, I don't mind.
Well, that's how hot is Billy Napier? I mean, I think he would absolutely take the Florida job, which is a top 10 job in America.
I mean, if Florida could trade for him, they would.
Yeah. Is Billy Napier's seat hot?
I don't think it is currently, but he's losing a recruit every day, almost as often as he's losing football games. So I think it's going to be scorching hot going into next season. I think he does come back. He's got something like a $32 million buyout. I can't imagine they're going to pull the trigger unless he gets smoked this weekend at Missouri, and then they get embarrassed at home by Florida. Florida State's a really good team, but they're not going to put up with you losing by 40 points. That would be 5 straight losses to end the season. I think in that scenario, but I do think that's highly unlikely. You can't say they went toe-to-toe with LSU, but they gave them a battle. They were winning in the third quarter, so they're still fighting. They've not given up. I'm 95% sure Billy Napier's back.
Just real quick, final minute here. Michael Bratton with us, SEC Mike, and then that SEC podcast is where you can hear his great work. Tennessee taking on Georgia this week. Georgia, the new number 1. What do you make of the Bulldogs? I think rightfully so, number one in the college football playoff rankings, now jumping Ohio State, and Tennessee coming off the loss. What type of chance do you give Tennessee to keep this game close, a fourth quarter game against the Bulldogs?
No. and I'm right there with you. I mean, I haven't thought Georgia was number one. I think people were ranking them that just based on what they did last year.
Yeah.
Different year, different team. But at this time, they have ascended to number one for me. And I realize they've been there for most people all year, but they're the most complete team in the country. I think Kirby's got them brainwashed. You see how quick Brock Bowers comes back when he had every reason in the world to shut it down. How can you not fight when our best players, at a breakneck pace coming back from an injury? They're going to win it all again. I really do think.
Great work, man. Thank you for the time and the insight today, and let's catch up soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, man.
Thanks, Mike.
SEC Michael Bratton there. Chad, the
Eli Drinkwitz, watch that name.
That's a good point.
Mark Stoops was this guy a couple years ago. He's been that way with some jobs. He'll have a really good year at Kentucky, and suddenly it's, hey, would Mark Stoops leave for this job? Would he leave for this job? Would he go back to Florida State where he's a coordinator? I would keep an eye on a coach that could strike while the iron is hot is Drink.
Drinkwitz right now making $6 million. His salary goes up to $7 million in 27. It's a long ways off. And I'm curious what bump he gets for a winning season, because that's also the Stoops way.
Well, and also New Year's Six Bowl is what they're headed to right now. They're ninth in the college football playoff rankings.
That's right. Hot seat discussion next.
Quote, a good state champion caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA. Then this weekend, after the video was posted and the critics, of course, came for him, he doubled down on what he said, posting this on X. Quote, it's sexist to say women's basketball players aren't as good as men's. That was a question, obviously. It's my opinion, and I'm putting $1 million behind it. If I'm wrong, the WNBA team can take my money and make more from one game than they do for the entire season. Okay, so let's get into this, because obviously there's a lot of people out there who are just assuming that Clay is being sexist, that he is trying to really punk the WNBA, because let's be honest, the ratings for the WNBA aren't great, which is exactly why Clay made the joke at the end of that. If you were to give them $1 million for losing the bet, that would be more than the WNBA would make regularly for one game under normal circumstances. But the fact remains that men and women biologically super different, and that's what he's talking about. We even look at a boys' high school basketball team and the makeup of their players, what they're able to do, their size, their skills, and look at the WNBA players who are oftentimes much older. They're professional basketball players, but still, the level of competition would not at all be on the same playing field. So, Chris, let's get into that. What is your take on this? The fact that people would say that, Clay, you're being sexist, when reality remains men and women, super different, even at very different ages, different places in their careers, there would be no matchup whatsoever.
I don't even think it's questionable. I love that Clay took it to him. I think a lot of times silence speaks louder than words. The Las Vegas Aces haven't said anything in response yet. Mm-hmm. So, look, you're right. I dug into the rosters, the Las Vegas Aces, and then, look, I've spent some time training at IMG Academy. I work with athletes at a school called Lou High, which is one of the top programs in the country. And we have guards 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". We're on the Aces. The tallest players are 6'3" and 6'4", and those are their bigs. So they don't even have anybody to really account for the bigs on the male teams. And I don't know that it's how in any way is this a sexist
question
thing to say. Yeah.
Well, I have a woman, I think, who will be able to help answer this question. She is super smart. She's super intelligent. I am a big fan of her. Everybody, you're also a big fan of her. We all are. It just has to be said. So let's go ahead and bring in the woman of the hour, Riley Gaines. Hello, Riley. I'm happy to see you again. I feel like I get to spend so much time with you these days.
I know, right? Very good to see you, and I will say it is rainy here as well, which just sucks.
Okay, so are you, I know the last time we talked, you were like bouncing all over the place. Where are you right now?
I'm actually in Nashville, but headed to New York today. So I'll be on deck.
Okay, well, welcome. You get to go from rain to rain.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, Riley, let's get into the topic that we were just discussing. Obviously, Clay being a little bit sarcastic in the way that he framed the question, but he's saying he's willing to make a bet that the WNBA champions, still being the champions, professional basketball players, would not be able to hold a candle to any high school boys basketball team in the country. Is he being sexist, or is he just speaking facts that men and women are very different in terms of what they are capable of athletically?
Boom. Right there. It's not sexist to say men and women are different. It, like you said, it's reality, it's truth, it's common sense, it's logic, it's reasoning. We all know it.
Glad you're with us. Wednesday edition. Hot Mic with Hutton Withrow across the OutKick network. Coming up, we'll get weird. Davey Hudson will join us in a matter of minutes. Chatting just the discussion there with Michael Bratton from that SEC podcast. More than just the SEC in terms of hot seat discussion or potential job openings. We know of a handful of them right now. But every coach, hot seat or not, is going to try to use Texas A&M as leverage if they can. If they can. I'm trying to figure out who's the next program in that order that can be leverage for the same type of coach that would be believable for A&M. Potentially open.
It looks like it's going to be a very quiet year.
Yeah,
and oftentimes when that happens, it's not quiet at all because there's big surprises. Someone's going to take an NFL job. I've brought up Eli Drinkwitz. Someone's going to take a job and leave that we're not expecting, and that's going to open things
Brian
up.
Kelly. Like Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly to LSU. Something's going to happen, right? I say it's going to be quiet, or it looks that way, knowing something will happen.
Right.
SEC-wise, it's Arkansas that's likely to make a move. I don't think Florida's doing anything, and then I'd watch the possibility of Eli Drinkwitz maybe moving on to somewhere else because he's had this great year in Missouri. Not likely, but a possibility there. So that's it for the SEC. Let's just go major conference by major conference. Big Ten, Ohio State, no. Michigan, only if Jim Harbaugh decides to go to the NFL. Are they going to make a move? They've defended him at every turn, so he's not going anywhere. Penn State and James Franklin, no. Mike Locksley at Maryland, no. He's probably still going to be there.
Right.
Greg Schiano at Rutgers, not going anywhere. Michigan State has a hire to make, but not to the level of Texas A&M in terms of driving up prices for everyone else. Indiana is probably going to make a move.
Not at that level.
Not going to move the needle, right? Not going to work here anymore, to quote Office Space. Iowa, not making a move. Matt's excited about that. He loves scoring 8 points a game. Nebraska, first year with Matt Rule, not making a move. Northwestern, are they going to keep David Braun? Don't know. Not really going to move the needle. That's a hire a group of 5 guy or a coordinator type job. Wisconsin, first year with Luke Fickell, no. Illinois, they're headed for they're 5-5 right now, trying to get bowl eligible. Don't think they're going to make a move with Brett Bielema, who did a really good job last year, but maybe one to keep an eye on. PJ Fleck at Minnesota, 5-5, maybe they decide to go in a different direction, given the exercise as punishment.
Yes.
That they got on to him about.
Punishment by exercise.
Punishment by whatever it was. Weirdness there at Minnesota. Maybe Purdue's with a first-year coach, so no. So again, quiet offseason, right? Now let's go to the Big 12, current Big 12. Texas, no. Gundy, not leaving Oklahoma State. Oklahoma and Venables, not going anywhere. Iowa State, Matt Campbell, they're 6-4. They're 5-2 in conference. Are they going to fire Matt Campbell? No. Would Matt Campbell leave for another job? Maybe.
Well,
maybe one to watch.
He's had plenty of options.
But Hutton, not going to move the needle like A&M.
No.
Kansas State, no. Chris Kleiman, terrific coach. West Virginia, maybe. Neil Brown, firmly on the hot seat coming into the year. But they're 6-4. They've exceeded expectations a bit, so that's a maybe. But decent job. probably an underrated job, West Virginia. Not going to move the needle and get people raises to the level of A&M. Texas Tech, disappointing year. Second year with Joey McIntyre, I think. Not going to make a move. Kansas, only if Lance Leipold goes to Michigan State or somewhere else.
Committed.
Not going to move the needle at KU. TCU, no. Houston, Dana Holgorsen, maybe. Not going to move the needle, especially as close as they are to A&M, which will move the needle. Baylor, I don't think so. But Dave Aranda's had a horrendous season. They're 3-7 so far this year. BYU, no. UCF, Gus Malzahn. Malzahn's a name that I've heard at Arkansas if they make a move. So maybe UCF
back to the high school
open.
days.
UCF, by the way, a great launching pad type job. Scott Frost, Josh Heupel.
You're right.
And now if Gus Malzahn can go to the SEC, that's a very attractive job for someone. Maybe a former Power 5 head coach. Maybe someone out of coaching that did a good job somewhere else, like a Malzahn at the time. Maybe a big-time coordinator, group of 5 coach.
Or Malzahn treats this like Matt Campbell has, where he's going and is in the Big 12, and he's got a chance to do what he did this past week to Oklahoma State, for instance.
Yeah. Cincinnati, first-year coach. Scott Satterfield, no. ACC, Florida State, no. Louisville, absolutely not. North Carolina, Mac Brown, maybe he retires. They're 8-2. North Carolina's a job that could get some juice, that could get some leverage for some coaches out there. NC State, Dave Doran, no. Virginia Tech, Brent Pry, no. Georgia Tech, no. Boston College, they've rebounded this year. Jeff Hafley was in some trouble coming in this year. They're 6-4. Boston College is definitely not moving the needle to an A&M level. I say he stays. Mike Elko may bounce for another job. Definitely not getting fired at Duke. Clemson, Dabo Swinney, probably not. I don't think Miami, even with this disappointing year, is firing Mario Cristobal. Syracuse will be open. I think Dino Babers is gone at Syracuse. How much does that job move the needle? Probably not a ton. What do you think, Hutton? That's probably hire a group of 5 head coach
I think the
type job, like Dino Babers was at Bowling Green when he took over.
Second best leverage for another coach looking for it is currently not open or not a hot seat program currently. It would be a surprise departure.
Yeah.
You know?
Virginia, Wake Forest, no. Dave Clawson's done a good job there. Too early on Elliott at Virginia to pull the plug there.
And the situation and the horrible situation they've been through.
Let me give you an interesting one, though. Pat Narduzzi at Pittsburgh. Been a weird season for Pitt. They are 2-8, and he has seemingly lost that locker room, and he continues to make public statements that is angering everyone in that locker room. That is one I would watch. I don't know the buyout situation, but Pitt may come open, and Pitt is a sleeper job. That could be very good for someone. Maybe a Gary Patterson, who said he wants to get back into coaching. Could be a good landing spot for him. Quickly to the Pac-12, Washington, no. Oregon, no. Oregon State, no. Arizona, no. USC, no. Utah, no. UCLA will have an opening. Cal probably will have an opening. With Justin Wilcox maybe on his way out. Arizona State, first-year coach, no. Same goes for Stanford. Deion Sanders at Colorado, no. Jake Dickert at Washington State, not getting fired. Maybe he takes another job.
But that's where the surprise departures would come from.
We just, in record time, went through the Power 5.
It's not there.
It's find the hot seats that are out there. This is a strange year where there's not a lot of guys you can point to and say, watch out for this school to make a move and fire this coach. Chip Kelly surprised us a little bit.
Yeah.
There could be other surprises. I'd put Pat Narduzzi on that list of possible surprises. Dino Babers, I think, likely out at Syracuse. But, yeah, I think it should be a quiet offseason, which means it absolutely will not be a quiet offseason.
Yeah, there'll be craziness in the transfer portal of coaches.
Yes.
Each and every week, it's strange. Let's get weird. Let's get weird with Davey Hudson.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, talking now.
Guys, before we get weird with we'll start off with a football story today. I do want to add that during the course of our show today, Northwestern has promoted David Braun to the full-time head coach at Northwestern.
Wow.
So that did happen. That's one job that will not be coming up or open. I do think.
By the way, I think that's a good move because he inherited a bad roster and a bad situation.
Right
and
zero head coaching experience and has done this and
he's done a nice job
last minute. Yeah. Yep.
That's one where you go to him. You're like, do you like it here at Northwestern? Okay, you can stay.
Well,
if you like it and want to stay, you can stay.
I kind of think we'll actually have quite a bit of turnover just simply because there's so much conference shakeup going into next season. Teams kind of want to get a leg up there, but that's not weird. What is weird is Jameson Williams, former Alabama wide receiver, first-round pick by the Detroit Lions, posted a photo on Instagram the other day, is on his story, and it was what he gets to order at McDonald's.
Okay.
And he got a
I can't wait to see
McDouble,
this.
but he decided, I'm going to put my Oreo McFlurry on his cheeseburger. What do you guys take on this?
I mean, come on. This is like Will Levis with the mayo and the coffee. Is this a stunt for social media?
I don't know. I would prefer this over the mayo and the coffee, though.
I don't know. I might actually try mayo and coffee before that.
Just don't go in excess.
This isn't a thing. I don't even know how to weigh in on this because it's insane. No one ever thought, this hamburger good and this McFlurry good. I'm going to mix the two together. First off, one, freezing cold and tough to the mouth, to the touch.
Maybe he likes the texture.
The other one is nice and warm and a warm meal, and you're going to put that on top to make your burger freezing cold? I think it's a stunt.
When you eat, you drink something cold, though.
David, we need further we need to get Matty Ice, our investigative team, on this.
Go try
and find out. This cannot be
I want to
real.
taste this before I denounce this.
I personally
I enjoy
I'll show
both.
bias. I have a vendetta against McDonald's, so I just think their food and just the establishment's absolute trash.
What's your vendetta? You watched Super Size Me and you had an epiphany about them?
I blame them for the death of one of my pets.
Okay.
You blame them
Can we
instead
save
of you
that
for letting...
for a future?
We can save
Can you
that
jot
for
that
another
down?
story.
Did you feed their food to your pet?
I did not.
Okay.
But my pet.
Someone did.
We'll save that story for another time.
Because I blame that your roommate or whoever fed the food to your pet.
By the way,
more than McDonald's.
McDonald's with the special recipe for their Coca-Cola, exceptional.
Yeah. They got their own patent, right?
Yeah, special. And also the fries. Love the fries.
I've always
Fries are
said
great.
there are two types of people I'm better than. That's terrorists and people who enjoy McDonald's. But if you're Jameson Williams, one, you've had a terrible start to your NFL career. I would probably worry about having a better dietary plan. This just isn't going to go well.
It's not real. It's him trying to get a rise out of people on the internet. I'm telling you. I refuse to believe.
What did he comment
Let's get our show booker to work on getting Jameson Williams on the show. We can ask Jameson Williams on this show.
Yes.
My first question is that real? Do you really put Oreo McFlurry on your burger? If so, why?
It was presented without comment. I knew a guy that would change one of his jobs back in the day was changing the or actually they'd always call him in for maintenance work for the McFlurry McFlurry
it's always
machines
broken.
because it's always broken. He said that's one of the most disgusting things he's ever seen whenever they open that up, just how dirty those things actually are because they don't get routine maintenance. That's part of
It's
the
like the
reason
coffee maker on a plane.
they're always not working is just because the thing it's a bleep show according to him who would
Sounds
go
like an
around
excuse
town.
to me to not fix these things, even though they're probably working just
I
fine.
don't want to know. I don't want to see behind the curtain. I don't want to know what's going on back there half the time. If it's something gross, as long as it does not make me sick as I eat the food and it tastes okay, I'd rather not know. That's my ignorance is bliss for me.
Guys, for our next story, it's also a gross one. We'll just put that out there to start off with. But a man in Nebraska, 41-year-old Ryan Smith. That's a pretty popular name, so I feel sorry for you if you have it. Here's his mugshot. You can see it here on the screen. Ryan Smith was arrested, and the reasoning for his arrest it's quite strange. He worked at a funeral home in Nebraska, and he was sent to pick up the body with him and a coworker were sent to pick up the body of a deceased man that died of natural cause. There's nothing off there. But while he was in this now deceased man's apartment, something caught his eye. And that was this deceased man's sex doll. So he decided he had to leave, take the body back to the morgue, get everything straightened away there. But he called the apartment complex and said that he needed a warrant to come and get the sex doll, that they needed to do a biopsy on it. Well, of course, the manager said it's an odd request. One, you work for a funeral home. You're not the type of person that would come in and be the one to gather this. That'd be something for the local sheriff's department
A
to handle.
biopsy on the doll?
Yes. Again, Ryan Smith, probably not the most intelligent person here, not thinking through everything to the best. Yeah, well, we'll
be definitive. Not intelligent.
Yeah.
I'll leave it up. You saw his picture. You've heard this part of the story so
Well,
far.
he looks fine. Looks like a guy from Nebraska. But, I mean, yeah, he's clearly not right. But, yeah, go ahead.
Or here.
And
yeah,
so,
I mean, but anywhere. I didn't mean that. Sorry to everyone in the Cornhuskers fan. I didn't mean that to disparage you. I'm like,
Sorry, apologize to your family.
He
right
looks
now.
like someone from Middle America. Yeah.
he ultimately did
well,
not
no
like
better, no worse.
Heartland.
We know this guy, right, Hutton? Like we all know a guy
No
that
doubt.
looks just like him. Like
Yeah.
he looks pretty normal.
Yes.
he was not satisfied with being told no. And so he ends up showing up to the apartment complex, manages to get inside. Manager suspected something was up, goes to check on the door that's dead bolted, bottom door's locked, calls the cops. Eventually, Ryan Smith comes out looking disheveled, clothes all apart, and he had fun, but was subsequently arrested.
Definitively crazy.
Yeah, and I feel like your algorithm, Davey, has really zoned in on sex doll stories. I think it's really feeding you a massive amount of sex doll stories. It's like, hey, if you like this story in Spain, you're going to love this story out of Nebraska, and it just goes right into that. If you like, it's like Netflix. You like this, you'll love this. Davey sees that necrophilia,
you can read
sex
this
doll
story on
funeral parlor
OutKick.com
story,
right now.
and then you immediately are like, I'm sucked in. I'm right back in.
What was the movie with the guy who falls in love with the sex doll?
Her with
Was it
Joaquin
her?
Phoenix, yeah.
Yeah, maybe this is his.
Was it a doll or was it just like a piece of AI?
It was a piece of AI. It was his phone, I think.
Well,
Yeah, it was like a virtual woman.
Yeah, they locked eyes whenever he knew they.
I got a show recommendation about that's similar to this, by the way.
All right.
Shockingly enough, when we come back.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
Is it fair for people to be upset with Barbie?
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna lib. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose. I mean, what have you seen firsthand of how this has affected you in the plant and your fellow employees? Under Joe Biden, the Taliban has retaken Afghanistan. Putin has invaded Ukraine. So if there was ever a time for freaking aliens to inhabit and conquer Earth, now would be that time.
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I made the call to end the Me Too movement. And today I'm going to continue making that case. And that's just a way to further taunt these women, to make them feel less than, to make them realize that this has just become a big joke. Deion Sanders is the Donald Trump of football.
We were directly impacted by the whole Leah Thomas thing, and we were able to see you guys on the ground with your signs supporting. That was huge.
They were saying, oh, it's only 1 or 2. That's rubbish, and we all know that's rubbish. Once those trans-identifying males were able to succeed, it just encouraged others.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. A bold taste of a Southern legend.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. Rolls on. Fast-paced show today, Chad. Always great. Always great. Tomorrow the weekend arrives for you.
Going straight from here to my final softball practice of the year of 2023. This will be it. One tournament this weekend. I won't be able to see much football. I'll be coaching these girls to hopeful greatness, and that ends with a practice tonight as we get ready for our out-of-town tournament this weekend.
I know you're extremely bummed about missing Georgia, Tennessee, but imagine had Tennessee,
I'm really not. You know, it's very
because
weird.
Tennessee lost.
Well, no, look, Tennessee's performance against Missouri has no bearing on my anticipation of this game. I know
but
how
there would be a SEC
much,
championship chance, right?
I know how much better Georgia is than Tennessee. So my view of this game is just, well, I'm going to be coaching a tournament and not see it. And if Tennessee wins, great. It's going to be one of the great wins in the history of the program, and I'll go back home. I've got it recorded, and I'll watch it. And if they lose by 4 or 5 touchdowns, I can just go home and delete it. And it's like it never happened. I'll read about it that night, and then I'll watch more football games at night when I'm back in the hotel room. And then, that's it. That was that. Wash my hands of it. Then I'll get ready for a big NFL Sunday.
What is your movie or TV show tie-in to the previous segment?
Media
recommendation?
New show recommendation. Murder at the End of the World is the name of the show on Hulu. It's on FX. So it airs weekly on FX, and they'll post it on Hulu to stream. Clive Owen, who I love. I love a British guy with a deep voice, and that's Clive Owen. It's rare.
He's your
most
Jim
British
Harbaugh
guys.
Yes.
Most British guys don't have the deepest of voices. I love a deep voice British accent. That is Clive Owen.
Clive Owen or Jude Law?
It's a really good. I like Clive Owen better. Jude Law is very good though. That's a good one to bring up because I do like Jude Law's work. I didn't like when he did the Young Pope, but other than that,
Me either.
I liked him in almost everything else. So the best way to describe this show is it's sort of Clue and Knives Out. Meets The Night Of, the miniseries from HBO.
You've sold me on that description.
It's like it's crazy. There's a little bit of like an AI twist to it. Clive Owen is this tech billionaire. There's a murder mystery. There's a separate murder mystery involving a true crime detective that wrote a book about trying to solve a serial killer. And then there's Iceland is the backdrop of this, the murder at the end of the world. And it's like a tech summit where it's just 20 people invited by this billionaire. So that's where it's kind of like Clue, a whodunit, where it sets up pretty quickly about what the big mystery is that's going to be involved. But they're separate mysteries. It's sort of a love story involved. It's one episode in, Hutton. I'm as excited about the rest of this series as I have been about a show in a while.
That's good. That's a great recommendation.
In a bit of a drought with shows that I really get into. I watched Fall of the House of Usher, but I kind of hate watched it by about episode 5 or 6. But just to get through it, it was okay. But this has great potential.
Chad, one thing we're not into is the NBA in-season tournament because it's hard to describe the format. The most excitement we've seen thus far is from last night. Draymond Green, Rudy Gobert, and the ejection. The chokehold that Draymond uses and how long he kept it on with Gobert. And the idea that there are those that are actually on the other side of the opinion that he should not be suspended instead of the obvious case where the track record here, you go on YouTube and watch highlights of, lowlights if you want to call it that, 10-minute videos of Draymond taking cheap shots or getting into, taking issue with someone or something based on what's happening in game. This is a no-brainer, and it's a common trend that if the NBA really wants to send a message, this is what they should be fining and suspending players on, ejecting players over, not dunking and flexing over a player based on excitement like you would see in the NFL for a touchdown celebration. Can it go over the top? Sure. Does it all the time? No, it didn't in Giannis's case last week. In this case, this should be swift and easy and detrimental because the guy continues to do things that are just stupid and out of line. The most recent one from last night. And I love Gobert, his comment saying, if Draymond really knew how to put on a chokehold, that this could have been really bad for me.
He's right. I mean, with a guy that big and that strong, it could have been really bad. Look, at some point, there has to be, I'm talking like season-long suspension for a culmination of just being dirty. There's got to be a really, really heavy penalty in all this. And keep in mind, the Warriors chose Draymond Green over Jordan Poole after Draymond Green punched him a year ago. They like what he brings to the table.
They win.
They win with him.
Right.
They see him as a winner. Steve Kerr clearly has his back. His teammates have his back because usually when someone is assaulted at practice, it's the assaultee and not the assaulter that's rewarded. It's Draymond Green who gets to stay. And Jordan Poole, who's on his way out.
And this is the second straight game he's been ejected.
Well, I say that because we know the Warriors don't care. They're not going to do anything. So the league's got to come down and do something. The Warriors think this is awesome, clearly, because they continue to employ him because he's a key part of what they do rebounding-wise and how they want to go about winning. They see a lot of value in Draymond Green, a guy who was, at one point in his career, a much better offensive weapon than he is now. Now he's just a weapon when he plays games because he's trying to hurt people.
So the Woj bomb, we're waiting on the suspension announcement because it's got to be coming. But the idea that, per Adrian Wojnarowski, the NBA is investigating the events of Tuesday's game, and the league plans to complete its review of the role that Green played prior to Golden State's game against the Oklahoma City Thunder on Thursday as well. I mean, how much more evidence do you need? The Gobert saying, yeah, it wasn't the deep choke hold that he had on me. He was trying to go lights out. He was trying to get me to go out. I didn't, based on the fact that he didn't know how to put the chokehold on, but it was on there long enough to where he could have. And then there's this, Kendra Andrews of ESPN says that, and quotes Gobert post-game, so Steph Curry missed the game due to knee soreness. And Gobert says, every time Steph doesn't play, Green doesn't want to play without his guy Steph, so he does anything he can to get ejected.
I mean, if that's true, you got to suspend him for the rest of the season. As a repeat offender? Well, you got to do something pretty extreme.
Well, this is, the kick that took place in the playoffs.
Well, there was multiple kicks.
Oh, right. But
that led to the suspension.
But you end up with this, and it's like there doesn't need to be anything else that leads up to a suspension in this case. So, and they haven't gone up to a great start, so a lot like last year.
How has the in-season tournament gone, other than the fighting?
This is the only time we've brought it up, really.
The fighting has helped the interest.
Yeah. I mean,
I sent you guys a great Denzel Washington clip from Training Day that it's Josiah Johnson on X that I follow, who does hilarious sports. Like, he just finds the right clip for everything. And it was his interpretation of Adam Silver getting angry at everybody fighting. And it was a reference to Training Day that you'll have to go back and watch.
A 10-second chokehold, though. Oh, the best, too, on social is someone has overlaid, much like we would see with, like, Jim Ross from the WWF, WWE days, putting it up, behind the actual play. Someone's got this with Joe Rogan, on UFC commentary doing this, which is really good. Check that out if you can.
I don't like. Are guys fight? Are we getting in fights because people actually care about the in-season tournament, or are we getting in fights because NBA players don't like playing games in November? Period. So they would just prefer to fight.
I think this is
like
just
the accusation that Draymond Green is just trying to get tossed because he doesn't want to not play a game without Steph.
I don't know. I mean, you've got Stephen A. who said that. You've got Jay Williams who's saying that it should be a double-digit suspension. That's what he's expecting. And Stephen A. is thinking, well, he didn't throw a punch, so he's thinking it's going to be less than that. I mean, but the suspension in recent times for Draymond has been based on track record. They've made that. So how do you not tack on more? Just based on track record alone.
Just repeat offender status.
And stop with the technicals and ejections based on small things like what Giannis is doing.
Hey, shout out to what took place in Chicago last night with the Champions Classic. Duke, Michigan State, not that great of a game, but Michigan State made a little bit of a run to make it interesting late. No points hardly in the first half. And then Duke went on a run and separated. Big win for John Shire and Duke coming off the home loss to Arizona. That Kentucky-Kansas game was fantastic.
It was great.
That was, I mean, there were kind of trading 10-point leads at one point where one team was going a big run.
Yeah, yes. Big moments, big shots.
Hunter Dickinson, who claimed that he was doing the courageous thing by leaving Michigan and going to Kansas. He was pretty courageous last night. 26 points, 21 rebounds in that game.
Chad, I was thinking this. Had he left during this time frame for Michigan, people would applaud him.
Yeah.
Thank you for going to Kansas.
But tell us what you think about Jim Harbaugh's suspension, even though you're not at Michigan anymore. We'd like to get your thoughts on it. He was terrific last night. Huge three-pointer from the top of the key at the buzzer of the first half that I think pulled Kansas to within 7 at halftime. And Kentucky, this is another one of those teams that I watch them. I think, okay, it's almost every other year with them or every third year, they get the right freshman class. They're always getting a top-notch freshman class with 3 or 4 5-stars.
Yeah.
But it's every other year they get the right mix of dudes that are competitors, that can defend, and this feels like the right mix of dudes. They were without 3 of their 7-footers, their big guys, and they were right there with Kansas on a neutral court the whole game. I was very impressed with Kentucky, very impressed with Kansas' resiliency to get back in that game and win it.
And now
that was a fun night of college basketball. Hutton, it is difficult to get all into college basketball in November, but that was a nice precursor for what's to come with the Maui Invitational and some of these tournaments around Thanksgiving.
And Chad, you would have recommended the same thing, but at the very end of yesterday's show, Davey said this is kind of his tip-off for the college season. It used to be, right?
Yeah.
So I took his recommendation. It was based on, he brought it up because his Duke Blue Devils are playing. But also, like, when I saw Kentucky-Kansas, Kansas is a big favorite to win the Maui Invitational. But there are some other solid programs going to be in that tournament. So I was like, okay, they're playing Kentucky. Let's see what's going on. Really, I wanted to see Coach Cal complain that his team's really young, right?
Oh, my gosh.
This is the time of year where they're going to have to grow, right? That's not the case this year, what I saw. And if Kansas is that big of a favorite going to the Maui Invitational with some solid programs like Tennessee, Gonzaga, Xavier, I believe is Marquette.
Marquette, yeah, Gonzaga, UCLA, Tennessee opens with Syracuse.
Yeah.
Chaminade.
But
Chaminade's always in that tournament.
But the fact
as the host.
that they're big favorites in the minus money versus all the others in plus money tells me that they're the team. And last night I saw Kentucky go toe-to-toe with them, and Tennessee, according to Billis, is better than Kentucky. It's going to be a fun year.
I could not tell at halftime if Holly Rowe of ESPN was trolling John Calipari, which I would have loved, or said something that just really irritated me.
Okay.
But she opened her question
Her microphone irritated me.
Going, Coach, I know you've got a young team, but what do you make of these young kids? And I'm thinking, oh, gosh, here we go. Like you mentioned, the young team thing.
Yeah.
John Calipari, every year, you can just write it in stone.
Not this year.
Young team, he's going to talk about. Now, he just went on to say, these kids are playing. You know, I like these guys. He was very complimentary. He's like, we got guys who are playing, giving us great minutes, and he was complimentary of everyone. But that's always just we got these kids out here that are just kids.
Also,
all these kids. And like, that is your program.
Yeah.
Like, you have built your program around kids, not keeping guys 4 years. And it's been successful But don't run and hide from that. Just that's who you are.
The other thing, too, so the Maui Invitational, I was glad they pointed this out. Not in Maui, of course, due to the fires. It's going to be in Honolulu. But the amount of money raised by these exhibitions that from programs.
That's awesome.
$2 million plus. You know, Tennessee did this. Kansas did this.
Tennessee and Michigan State. Michigan State hosted them, yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's remarkable how much money was raised.
Kansas,
based
Illinois
on those exhibition matchups. So props there, and what's going to be a very competitive tournament. If you're looking for something other than maybe a bad Tuesday night football matchup on CBS Sports Network, or who knows, probably a bad Thursday night football matchup. Tomorrow night should be good, though.
Our guy Timmy
Baltimore
B's going to have you
Cincy.
covered on Friday nights, though. He'll have a good Friday night matchup
And Maui,
on
the
FS1.
Maui Invitational tips off Monday?
Monday.
All right, cool. Weekend starts tomorrow, though.
It does start tomorrow.
Because football returns.
Celebrate accordingly tonight.
Join us.
And
3 o'clock
responsibly.
Eastern, Thursday.